Hey, tonight we're going back to a time that history textbooks love to sanitize into something noble, heroic, and vaguely inspiring. But don't worry, I'm here to ruin that. Forget the soaring speeches and paintings of men in powdered wigs dramatically gesturing over parchment. This is not the musical version. This is the actual version. The one with trench foot, amputations and diarrhea as a leading cause of death. You're about to experience the American Revolutionary War the way most people lived it, underfed, underpaid, and overwhelmingly unwashed. You won't be hanging out with George Washington. You'll be following orders from a guy named Jedediah who can't read and thinks bleeding out of your ears is just a strong work ethic. Now, before we get into it, go ahead and like the video if you've ever been grateful for indoor plumbing. Subscribe if you enjoy history served cold, mouldy, and with a side of dread. And leave a comment with your current location and the exact temperature of your feet, because I guarantee they're still warmer than a soldier's at Valley Forge. Okay, settle in, dim the lights, ignore that phantom itch on your legs. It's not lice. Probably. And prepare to go to sleep to the soothing sounds of misery, muskets, and the American dream with dysentery. Welcome to 1776. You've just been conscripted whether you like it or not. Good luck. You're going to need it. Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1776. You're a patriot now, which is a fancy word for tired, unpaid, and probably dying slowly. You don't live in a cosy colonial home with a fireplace and a warm breakfast waiting on the hearth. You live in a tent, if you're lucky. If not, you're curled up under a thin blanket in a field, surrounded by other miserable men who also thought this war was going to be more exciting and less moist. It's morning, which you can tell because the sky has changed from pitch black to slightly less black, and someone is yelling at you to get up. There's no alarm clock, just the screech of your sergeant's voice, a man who hasn't smiled since 1759 and smells like tobacco, regret, and unwashed wool. Your body protests immediately. Your back feels like it was run over by a horse-drawn cart full of rocks, which, given how you slept, might be exactly what happened. You blink, or try to. One eye's crusted shut from sleeping face down in damp dirt, and the other one's just given up. Your bed is a patch of ground that alternates between frozen and soggy, depending on how recently the sky decided to dump water on it. You have a blanket that used to be wool. Now it's more of a living organism made of mould, sweat, and whatever disease your tent mate coughed up last night. The air smells like damp earth, old campfire smoke, wet leather, and a faint undercurrent of something worse. It's either rotting meat or Private Jenkins's feet again. No one knows. No one wants to find out. Your uniform, a generous term for whatever's hanging on your body, is clinging to your skin in all the worst ways. It wasn't tailored to fit you. It wasn't tailored at all. It's a collection of mismatched, threadbare garments issued to you 3 months ago and never washed since. There are buttons missing, holes appearing in places that shouldn't have airflow, and a dark stain near the hem that may or may not be blood. You stopped asking questions about your clothes 2 weeks ago when your sleeves began to crawl on their own. You try to sit up, but your spine has other ideas. Every joint clicks like a musket misfiring. Your knees throb. Your hip is locked. Your neck is at a permanent left tilt from sleeping on a rock you mistook for your knapsack. You stretch, instantly regret it, and settle into a gentle full body ache that never really goes away. This is your new baseline. Pain, but with historical context. Someone nearby is coughing. Not the polite kind. The "I've been dying for a month and the war refuses to kill me" kind. The hacking doesn't stop. It just merges into the background noise of other soldiers groaning, spitting, mumbling about food, and trying to lace up boots that are more whole than leather. One guy down the line has already given up. He's lying there, eyes open, just staring into the void like maybe if he concentrates hard enough, the war will end out of pity. You reach for your shoes, or what's left of them. They're stiff with mud, cracked open at the toes, and smell like mildew and trench rot. Putting them on feels like shoving your feet into 2 screaming bags of gravel. Laces? Gone? Socks? Also gone, or fused to your foot by days of sweat and frostbite flirting. You shove your feet in anyway, wince, and stand. Standing is a process. You don't just rise, you negotiate with your own body. Ankles creak, knees buckle, spine protests. Your muscles feel like overcooked pork jerky. Your stomach growls, but not in that casual, I could eat kind of way. It groans like a dying animal, desperate for something that isn't salted mystery meat or stale biscuit crumbs. You're hungry, in the slow burning marrow-deep way that never really shuts off. You've been half-fed for months, and your body knows it. The cold air hits your face like a slap. It's early spring, which in 1776 means everything is wet, nothing is warm, and hypothermia is a daily team-building exercise. There's dew on everything. Your blanket is wet, your rifle is wet, your bones are wet. You wonder briefly if it's raining, but no, it's just the permanent mist that clings to your soul now. Someone left their shirt outside to dry overnight. It's now a frozen flag of poor decision-making, flapping gently in the breeze. There's no mirror, but you can imagine what you look like. Pale, gaunt, and dirty. Your beard is patchy. Your skin is dry and cracked in some places, oily and infected in others. Your hair's grown out, but not in a heroic, wind-blown way. It's more of a, this man has lice aesthetic. And you do, you definitely do. Everyone does. There's no shame in it anymore. It's like a badge of enlistment. If your scalp isn't itching, you're either dead or about to be. Someone hands you a dented tin cup of water. You sip it. It tastes like smoke, rust, and the inside of a barrel that used to store vinegar. It's cold enough to remind you that your teeth are still loosely attached to your skull. You try not to think about what else is floating in it. You just drink. Hydration is rare, and cholera hasn't introduced itself yet today. The officer making rounds this morning is a teenage aristocrat with perfect posture, polished boots, and zero idea what suffering feels like. He yells something inspirational in a clipped British accent that he definitely rehearsed in a mirror. No one listens. Someone burps in response. Another soldier just quietly flips him off and keeps buttoning his coat, one-handed, because his other arm hasn't bent properly since December. You look around the camp. Tents sag like tired ghosts. Smoke from a dying fire curls lazily into the air. A few men are poking something unidentifiable in a pan. It smells like despair and last month's pork fat. You know it'll be your breakfast soon, and you've already accepted that. You move toward the centre of camp, trying not to trip on the roots, rocks, or other bodies that still haven't gotten up. Someone's boots are sitting in a puddle. They might still be attached to someone. You don't check. No one's talking much. The mood is grey, like the sky. No birds are singing. No one is laughing. You forgot what laughter even sounds like. The last joke you heard was about a guy who lost 3 toes and didn't realise until he tried to walk and fell over. Everyone laughed for half a second, then remembered they had 4 toes left and stopped. You pass the camp latrine, which is just a trench with some logs laid across it. It smells exactly how you would expect, which is to say apocalyptic. Someone squatting nearby with a musket propped against their knee. Eye contact is avoided. There's no privacy here. There's no dignity. There's just function and fumes. Morning rolls forward, slow and indifferent. Orders are barked. A roll call happens, and half the names are met with silence or coughing. A few guys have disappeared overnight. Maybe they died. Maybe they deserted. Maybe both. No one cares anymore. As long as someone else is around to load your musket when your hands stop working. You're told you'll be moving soon. Marching. Again. No one cheers. You've been marching for months. From one miserable hill to another. You don't even know what state you're in anymore. It doesn't matter. The mud's the same everywhere. The enemy's either a mile away or a week away. You never know until bullets start flying or someone screams. Your commander wants you battle ready. That means cleaning your weapon, which has jammed 3 out of the last 5 times you tried to fire it. You sit by a stump, pull out your cleaning rod, and try to pretend you know what you're doing. You don't. None of you do. You're farmers, coopers, blacksmiths, and teenagers. You were promised glory and ended up with trench rot. Someone nearby is crying, not loudly, just a quiet, steady leak of despair. You don't ask. You don't need to. Everyone has a reason. A dead brother. A lost leg. A letter from home that stopped coming. A stomach ulcer that refuses to quit. Doesn't matter. No one's going to fix it. The camp begins to stir. Fires are poked, rifles are slung, boots are adjusted and cursed at. Breakfast is distributed, if that's the word you want to use. A fist-sized lump of hardtack, grey and chipped like ancient tile, paired with something in a tin that smells like regret. You chew slowly because chewing fast might break your last molar. Your stomach tries to reject it, but you push it down. You don't eat to enjoy. You eat to not die. That's the job now. Not freedom, not liberty, not some poetic dream of a new republic. Just don't die yet. That's your mission. Everything else is window dressing. Someone asks what day it is. No one knows. No one cares. Time here is just pain with gaps. And now, the officer is yelling again. It's time to move. Time to walk toward another battlefield. Another skirmish. Another chance to lose a finger or get gut shot by a redcoat with better shoes than you. You hoist your pack. It's heavy. It always is. Your musket digs into your shoulder. Your feet already hurt, and you haven't taken the first step. Your face is numb. Your hands sting. Your ears ring from last week's cannon fire. You take one step, then another, then another. And that's how the war begins. Not with a bang, with a limp. You made it through the morning routine, which mostly involved not dying before breakfast. Now let's rewind for a moment, because if you're going to survive this war, which you won't, you'll need to understand one thing very clearly. Your bed isn't a bed. It's a suggestion of sleep in a place where sleep actively resists you. It's not comfortable. It's not warm. And most nights it's not even dry. Your bed is a damp blanket, maybe 2 if you stole one, in the middle of a muddy field that used to be a pasture, then became a camp, then became a swamp, and now might actually be alive. Let's set the scene. When the sun sets, assuming you even see the sun that day, everything just gets darker and colder and wetter. There's no golden hour. There's just a slow descent into total blackness and a rising fog that smells like mouldy wood and foot rot. The air gets heavy, the temperature drops 15 degrees, and the grass somehow becomes wetter than the nearby stream. You don't know how that works. You don't question it anymore. You try to find a dry spot to sleep, but there isn't one. The whole camp is just a series of depressions in the earth that collect water like nature's own chamber pots. You pick the least terrible patch of ground and hope your back isn't still bruised from yesterday's roots. If you're lucky, your blanket is only partially soaked. If you're unlucky, it's been lying in a puddle since the last march and smells like something that died trying to escape it. You spread it out like a man trying to pretend he has choices. You don't. The fabric clings to itself, stiff in some places, slimy in others. You shake it once, more out of habit than hope. The lice inside it don't even flinch anymore. They've accepted you as part of their ecosystem. This is their home now. You're just visiting. There's no mattress, not even straw. You lie directly on the ground, which is a complex combination of mud, gravel, pine needles, and something sticky that you choose not to investigate. Every time you shift your weight, you hear a squelch. Not from your blanket, from the soil beneath you. It's like the earth itself is trying to digest you slowly. You try to get warm, which is laughable. You curl into a fetal position, wrap the blanket around you like a sad burrito of trauma, and wait. There's no pillow. Your knapsack is too lumpy. Your arm goes numb if you use it. Your rifle isn't soft enough, and probably still has soot on it from the last battle. Eventually, you just bury your head in the crook of your elbow and try not to breathe in whatever bacteria is growing in your sleeve. Sleep doesn't come easily. First, your body has to stop shaking. Then the bugs have to settle. Then the guys in the next tent over have to shut up about whatever nightmare they're having. Which they won't. Someone's always yelling in their sleep, kicking around, swearing, praying, or sobbing quietly into their ragged blanket. You don't blame them. You just try to block it out. And then there's the cold. The kind of cold that settles into your spine and radiates outward until your bones start whispering threats. It's not dramatic. It's just constant. A dull, miserable seepage of temperature that turns your feet into frozen bricks and your fingers into twigs. Your breath fogs, then condenses on your face, then freezes again. You wake up with a crust of frost on your eyebrows and snot icicles in your nose. If it's raining, and it probably is, the situation gets creative. Your blanket gets heavier as it absorbs water like a sponge. The drops don't gently fall. They stab. You try to build a shelter with your cloak, or the flap of your tent, or a broken barrel if you're feeling architectural. It doesn't matter. The rain finds you. It always finds you. Water trickles down your back, pools at your waist, soaks through your underclothes, and settles in all the worst places. Sometimes it hails. Sometimes it sleets. Sometimes it just mists constantly, like the sky is spitting on you out of spite. Your clothes never dry. Your boots are never empty. Your feet are always damp. Trench foot isn't just a possibility. It's a personality trait now. You've seen a guy lose half a toe in his sleep because his foot never thawed out. He just woke up, looked down, and shrugged like he'd misplaced a button. There's no bug spray. Mosquitoes swarm you in summer. Ticks crawl up your legs in the tall grass. Fleas hop around your ankles like demonic confetti. You sleep scratching your skin raw, then wake up with your fingernails full of blood and bug parts. You might have typhus. You might just be dirty. The difference is academic. If you manage to drift off, it's not rest. It's a nervous shutdown. Your body gives up. Your brain doesn't. You dream about food you'll never eat, homes you'll never see again, and beds that don't try to drown you. Sometimes you dream you're marching. You wake up with your legs twitching, your calves locked up, and the bitter taste of stomach acid in your throat because your dinner was hardtack and mystery grease. Again. Some nights, someone screams. Not the nightmare kind, the stabbed kind. A patrol catches a deserter. A sentry spots movement in the trees. Someone stumbles drunk into the wrong tent and gets bayoneted by accident. You hear it all from your bed, not moving, not blinking, just praying it's not your turn to explain yourself to a man holding a musket and no patience. Other nights, it's animals. Raccoons, dogs, rats the size of loaves of bread. They sneak into tents, chew through bags, steal your rations. You've woken up more than once to a possum chewing on your sock. You didn't scream. You just watched it, dead-eyed, and waited for it to finish. Because fighting over a sock isn't worth the energy anymore. Then there are the guys who talk in their sleep. Not words. Full conversations. One guy in your unit used to recite Bible verses while snoring. Another begged his mother for forgiveness every single night. You learn things you never wanted to know. You can't unhear the sound of a grown man sobbing about his first crush, while simultaneously scratching his lice-infested scalp with a fork. And every morning the sun comes up, but no one cheers. You don't stretch. You just unfold yourself, limb by frozen limb, from the wet blanket of shame and defeat you've been hibernating in. Your joints pop. Your face is puffy. Your skin has new rashes. You're more tired than when you went to sleep. And your blanket, once again, smells like a barn fire soaked in horse piss. You hang it up to dry, which is a medieval joke. It'll hang there all day, absorbing ambient moisture from the air until you lay down in it again tonight. You scrape the worms off, shake out the bugs, and pretend it's better than sleeping on the ground directly. It isn't. You just don't want to find out how much worse the ground can be. Some nights you don't even get the blanket. You get a patch of hay if the quartermaster's in a good mood. Once, you slept on a pile of abandoned tent canvas. It was covered in mould and possibly human blood, but it was drier than your usual spot, so you called it a win. You even gave it a name. The Sweet. You miss the sweet. When winter comes, forget everything you thought you knew about cold. Your blanket freezes into a sheet of crunchy, fabric-shaped ice. You try to warm it with your body heat, but your body heat left 6 weeks ago. You pile on every scrap of cloth you can find. Cloaks, coats, stolen horse blankets. Doesn't help. You still wake up numb and wheezing, your breath forming tiny frost clouds that hover above your face like judgmental ghosts. And summer isn't any better. The heat doesn't make things dry. It just makes them sweatier. You lie there in a pool of your own moisture, swatting at mosquitoes, praying for a breeze that never comes. Your blanket clings to you like a desperate ex. You peel it off your chest every 20 minutes just to breathe. The air smells like old feet, stale meat, and disappointment. Still think you're going to catch a good night's sleep out here? Still dreaming of rustic colonial life and patriotic bonfires under the stars? There are no stars, only clouds, smoke, and the occasional flicker of lightning you hope doesn't hit your tent directly, although on the worst nights you start to wonder if getting struck might not be the worst way to go. So yes, this is your bed now. A damp, lice-ridden canvas of discomfort and disease. You lay in it each night like a sacrifice, and if you're lucky, the only thing that bites you is nature. You close your eyes and try to fall asleep. Again. Because tomorrow you march. And tomorrow's trail isn't any drier. Sleep didn't help. It never does. You wake up, or more accurately, you stop lying down. Your body doesn't feel rested. It feels like it lost a bar fight with the weather. Your mouth tastes like an ashtray dipped in spoiled molasses. Your tongue is dry. Your gums sting. Your lips are cracked from the cold and split at the corners. You instinctively try to smack your lips and immediately regret it as something crunchy flakes off the inside of your cheek. Could be old hardtack. Could be enamel. No one's sure anymore. Time for morning hygiene, a phrase that implies care, routine, and options. You have none of those things. Hygiene here is just damage control with low expectations. First, you need water, which means walking through a maze of sleeping bodies and half-collapsed tents toward the stream, if it's nearby, or the barrel, if you're cursed. The stream looks picturesque in theory, like something from a colonial painting, until you get close and notice the slime on the rocks, the mysterious film skimming the surface, and the suspicious bloated shapes floating downstream that used to be raccoons or possibly soldiers. That doesn't matter. It's water. It's all you've got. You dip your hands into it and immediately regret being alive. It's cold. Not invigorating cold. Vengeful cold. The kind of cold that makes your knuckles seize up and your skin go translucent. You splash your face. You gasp. You blink. You feel no cleaner. Now you're just wet and miserable instead of dry and miserable. You try to scrub the crust off your face with your hands. There's no soap. The concept of soap exists, but not in this camp. If someone has any, they're not sharing, because it's either homemade from animal fat and lye, or stolen from an officer's private stash. The closest you get to cleansing is wiping your face on your sleeve, which has already absorbed weeks of sweat, smoke, and trench slime. Your fingernails are caked with dirt. Underneath them are tiny civilizations you're pretty sure could vote in local elections. You think about cleaning them out. Then you remember you chewed half of them off during the last artillery barrage, and the rest are so brittle they snap off if you touch anything sharper than boiled turnip. Now your teeth! If you're lucky, and lucky is a spectrum at this point, you still have most of them. They're yellow, uneven, and starting to loosen. Your gums bleed when you think too hard. The back molars throb every time you chew anything harder than mashed disappointment. You haven't had a proper cleaning since your old neighbour died with a bottle of rum and a pair of pliers. Still you try. You pull out your hygiene kit, which consists of one twig and a satchel of tooth powder someone swears is made of crushed seashells, salt, and a little bit of mint. It isn't. It's mostly chalk, ash, and something that might be brick dust. The mint is more likely mould. You pinch some of it between your fingers, rub it onto your twig, and begin the ritual. You scrub the fronts of your teeth with all the energy of a man who's given up but still feels obligated to perform the act. The powder stings your gums, scratches your enamel, and dislodges what may have been a piece of last week's dinner. You don't rinse. There's no water to waste. You spit. A thick, grey blob that hits the dirt and steams in the morning cold like a warning to others. If you're feeling fancy, you'll run a rag over your face. Maybe clean your ears with the corner of it, assuming it hasn't already been used for worse. Some men chew on twigs or mint leaves if they can find any. You don't have either. The only greenery nearby is poison ivy, and something Jenkins claimed was forest parsley, before his lips ballooned to twice their size, and he collapsed under a tree. Your breath could kill a cow. Not metaphorically. Actually. You blew in the face of a goat once, and it passed out. You tried to laugh about it, but your teeth hurt too much to move your jaw. You keep your mouth closed now. It's safer for everyone. Let's talk shaving. You don't do it. Not regularly. You tried once with a rusty razor that left your face looking like a battlefield and your chin sprouting pus-filled craters for 2 weeks. Now you just let it grow. Uneven, patchy, itchy. Your beard looks like it's trying to escape your face. You scratch it constantly. Fleas love it. They move between your collar and your jawline like commuters. Some men go bald during service. Not from age, from stress, lice, and questionable camp tonics. You saw a guy try to wash his scalp with spirits and ash. It worked. All his hair fell out. He called it a blessing. No more combing, no more itching. Just a shiny, flaking dome that burns in the sun and freezes at night. A perfect metaphor for the revolution. Speaking of itching, your body is a mess. Your skin hasn't felt clean since you enlisted. You've washed, maybe twice since Christmas. The first time involved jumping into a freezing creek and scrubbing yourself with handfuls of sand like some kind of colonial raccoon. The second time was rainwater caught in your upturned tricorn hat during a storm. You stood there shirtless in the downpour while Jenkins sang hymns and your commanding officer called you both idiots. You smell. You all smell. It's no longer an insult. It's just data. Everyone here reeks of sweat, smoke, rotting wool, old blood and spoiled meat. You don't notice it anymore until a fresh recruit joins the unit and recoils from your proximity. Give him a week, he'll be just as fermented. There's no deodorant, not even a colonial equivalent. You can rub herbs on your armpits, but they rot fast, attract bugs, and make you smell like a failed garden. You've stopped trying. You've also stopped wondering why no one ever stands too close unless they're yelling. Bathing is a theoretical exercise. Some camps build crude wash pits, but they fill up with filth and disease faster than anyone can drain them. You could boil water for a bath, but then you wouldn't have anything to drink, and your rations already taste like sun-warmed sadness. You could wash in the river, but it's filled with fish, dead things, and half of everyone's digestive decisions. You've accepted being dirty. Not forgot to shower today dirty. Not ran a marathon dirty. We're talking layer upon layer caked grime, dried sweat, flaking skin, and open sores dirty. You scratch constantly. Your thighs chafe. Your armpits burn. You have spots on your back that bleed if you sleep wrong. Your underwear fuses to your body at night and peels off like a second, grosser skin each morning. And yes, underwear exists. In theory. You had one pair when you started. You don't anymore. They disintegrated. Eaten by the wash basin. Or time. Or maybe just stress. You go commando now under a uniform that rubs in all the wrong places and smells like a wet goat that died of shame. Your groin has opinions. None of them are good. As for latrines, that's not hygiene. That's punishment. A shallow pit dug with a shovel, or sometimes just a trench, or sometimes just walk 50 yards that way and hope you don't step in someone else's decision. There's no toilet paper. You use leaves, or hay, or the corner of your own shirt if you're desperate and forgetful. Your hands do more work than you'd ever admit. You rinse them in the same water you drink from, and pretend not to think about it. And after all that effort, all that scraping, all that cold water and bleeding gums and raw skin, you're still not clean? Not really. You just smell slightly less offensive to yourself, which is the best you can hope for. You walk back to your tent, or what's left of it, feeling no fresher than when you left. Your hair is damp, your skin is tight from dried river water, and your hands are already dirty again from touching the same flap of canvas everyone else touched before they died of dysentery. Someone nods at you as you pass. They think you've been grooming. You think you've been surviving. You both agree not to talk about it. Because the sun's up, your officer's yelling again, and it's time to eat, if you can call it that. Let's talk about what you're wearing. Not because it matters in terms of fashion. It doesn't. But because it will absolutely determine how many open sores you develop this week. Your uniform, if you can even call it that, is less of a matching outfit and more of a loose agreement between your body and whatever fabric is still clinging to it. You were probably told you'd be issued proper military clothing. Maybe you even saw a poster. Dramatic illustrations of crisp blue coats, polished brass buttons, clean tricorn hats, and shiny boots. Those posters were lies. What you've actually got is a collection of mismatched rags, threadbare wool, and items stolen from a guy who died 2 weeks ago under a wagon. Let's start at the top. Your hat, if you have one, is a crumpled, sweat-stained triangle of felt that used to be black but now looks more like the inside of an old boot. It doesn't fit. It never did. It either slides off every time you bend over or sits too tight and gives you a headache. You only keep wearing it because the alternative is sunstroke, rain in your eyes, or lice nesting directly on your scalp instead of under the brim. Your coat, you wish. Some soldiers get coats. You got what used to be a coat before someone set it on fire, then dragged it through a swamp and handed it to you like it was a prize. It's wool, technically. It's scratchy. It's heavy. And it smells like everyone who's ever worn it, all at once. The buttons are mostly gone, replaced with string, knots, or blind hope. One sleeve has a hole big enough to qualify as a second exit. Underneath, you've got your shirt, singular. It's linen, or was, before it turned greyish-brown and stiff enough to stand on its own. You've worn it every day since enlistment. You've slept in it, marched in it, fought in it, and bled into it more times than you remember. It used to be soft. Now it's crunchy in the armpits and permanently damp in the back. It has 3 buttons. One of them works. You don't even bother trying to tuck it in anymore. Gravity took over. Trousers? Maybe. If you're lucky, they fit, which means they don't cut off circulation when you squat. If you're not lucky, they're someone else's trousers, 3 sizes too big, cinched at the waist with rope, a belt, or, on really desperate days, a shoelace tied around your gut. There's a rip in the seat that you keep pretending isn't there, because no one said anything yet, and everyone else is too miserable to care. Now your shoes, or the void where shoes should be. Let's be clear. The Continental Army didn't have a closet full of matching boots waiting for you. Most men showed up with whatever footwear they had, and those didn't last long. Rain, mud, snow, marching, and poor design turned your shoes into glorified flaps of wet leather that shred your feet with every step. If you still have a pair, They've got holes in the soles, split seams, and laces made from twine or wishful thinking. More likely, you're barefoot. It's summer, so the mud's warm, and the blisters only get infected if you're lucky. Winter's worse. You've watched toes go black. You've seen men wrap their feet in rags, newspaper, anything they could find, and still lose them. Every time you take a step, it feels like walking on gravel while someone drives nails into your heels. You've stopped looking down. You don't want to know what's growing between your toes. Underwear? You don't have any. No one does. The term is almost offensive now. You used to care. Now you're just trying to keep your parts from sticking together. You tried crafting a loincloth once from an old flour sack. It chafed, moulded, and gave you a rash that still hasn't gone away. Now you go without, and just hope no one behind you has standards. Let's talk about lice. You have them. Everyone does. It's not a question. They live in your shirt seams, your coat lining, your blanket, your hair, your eyebrows, and probably in your soul by now. They don't bite occasionally. They feast. You've scratched yourself raw in the middle of a march. You've woken up to blood on your collar and known with absolute certainty that it's yours. You just don't know from where. There are methods for delousing. The most popular one, taking your shirt off, turning it inside out, and holding it over a fire until the seams crackle. You've done this more than once. You've also accidentally set it on fire more than once, which led to the moment you had to choose between wearing a half-burned shirt or going full savage. You chose the shirt. You still regret it. And then there's the smell. You don't notice it anymore. That's not a good thing. It means your body has adjusted to its own stench. You smell like wet dog, spoiled meat, old blood, and sour sweat. Your clothes are saturated with it. You hang them up to air out, but all that does is give the smell room to grow legs. When the wind shifts, even the enemy downwind knows you're coming. There are no changes of clothes, no laundry days, no footlockers full of options. You wear what you have until it rots, then you hope someone dies and you can loot their stuff. That's how you got your current trousers. From a man named Calvin who stepped on a rusted spike and didn't scream, just sat down and bled out quietly. You waited the polite amount of time, then stripped him and said a prayer. He had a better shirt than you. He still does. You're wearing it. Rain is the worst. It doesn't just soak your clothes. It fills every wrinkle, seam and shoe with cold, squelching discomfort. You once walked for 5 hours with your pants stuck to your thighs so tightly you thought you were bleeding. You weren't. Just bruising. Just swelling. Just the fabric's way of reminding you that nothing in this war is ever dry. And forget anything decorative. No insignia, no badges, no crisp blue coats. You once saw an officer walk past in polished gear and nearly cried. Not because you wanted his job. You didn't. But because his boots matched. His coat had both sleeves. And you swear, he smelled like soap. But here's the thing. No one really cares what you look like. There's no inspection, no style points. The British aren't impressed. Your own side isn't looking. Your fellow soldiers are just trying to not die. And your uniform, whatever it is one more layer between you and the dirt. You've stopped adjusting it. Stopped brushing off the ash. Stopped tying your sleeves properly. You've embraced the fact that you're one stiff breeze away from public indecency and one wrong move away from pants around the ankles in front of your unit. You just don't have the energy anymore. Sometimes, during camp downtime, you'll see men swap items. trade a too small jacket for a better fitting coat, hand off a hat, barter with buttons like currency. There's an entire black market of colonial fashion happening in the mud. You once traded a tin cup for a pair of socks. The socks had holes. The cup had a crack. Both of you pretended you were better off. At night, you take off as little as possible. Not for modesty, for survival. You don't want to wake up with your trousers frozen stiff or your coat missing because someone else needed it more. You sleep in everything, even the boots when they're dry enough. The laces dig into your ankles. Your shirt rides up. Your waistband folds over your ribs. You dream of cotton, or silk, or anything that doesn't smell like human fermentation. And in the morning, you rise again, stiff, stained, and vaguely steaming in the dawn air. You brush the bugs out of your collar, tug at your sleeves, try not to think about the sore behind your left knee. Then you shoulder your musket, hitch up your belt, and prepare to march in an outfit that hasn't fit right since last September. Because whether you're chasing freedom or just trying not to collapse in the mud, you're going to do it in one shirt, no shoes, and the company of about 1 million lice who know your name. You're up, you've splashed your face with water that probably came from a ditch, you've scraped your gums with brick dust, and your clothes feel like damp burlap lined with shame. Congratulations, it's breakfast time. Not that it matters. You won't feel full. You won't feel nourished. You'll just feel slightly more disappointed than usual. But now, with something stuck in your teeth. The term breakfast implies something warm, something pleasant. In the real world, it means pancakes, toast, maybe eggs. Out here, it means a wooden bowl, a hard slab of edible regret, and the slow realization that your stomach deserves better than what's about to happen. Your first course, hardtack, also known as ship's biscuit, teeth breaker, or colonial concrete. It's not bread, it's not even food in the traditional sense. It's a rock with calories. Baked until it's harder than bone, stored in crates for months, and passed out like punishment. You don't chew hardtack, you negotiate with it. Some guys try to soften it in water, which turns it into a gummy, bland paste that tastes like wet plaster. Others break it with the butt of their musket or a rock, then suck on the pieces like survival candy. You've seen people break teeth on this stuff. Real teeth, gone mid-bite. Just a crunch, a muffled swear, and then blood pooling around a jagged piece of 12-year-old flour baked during the French and Indian War. And you still eat it, because there's nothing else. And because not eating leads to the same conclusion, just slightly slower. Next to the hardtack, you get a scoop of something hot. Hot is generous. It's warm-ish grease with flecks of something floating in it. Could be fat. Could be ash. Could be meat if you're lucky. Probably isn't. They call it salt pork, but don't let the name fool you. It's more fat than flesh. It's been cured in enough salt to kill a small deer, stored in a barrel older than most of the soldiers eating it, and boiled until the texture falls somewhere between a razor and candle wax. The grease separates and floats on top, forming a thin film you pretend is flavour. You try not to look too closely. Last week, a guy found a hair. No one knows whose. He pulled it out, stared at it for a moment, then shrugged and kept eating. That's where you're at now. Hair doesn't register. Mould doesn't register. You've crossed the culinary event horizon. Taste is irrelevant. Survival is king. If the quartermaster's feeling generous, or guilty, you might get a boiled root, not a cooked root. Just a root that's been warmed. A carrot if you're lucky, a turnip if you're not, and a potato if God's really paying attention, They're not seasoned. They're barely peeled. You chew slowly, mostly to keep the memory of chewing alive in your jaw. Every once in a while there's stew. Don't get excited. It's mostly water, with a few scraps of whatever didn't rot fast enough to be thrown out. Maybe a piece of rat that got too close to the fire. Maybe leftover cabbage. Maybe something that used to be pork, but now just goes by meat adjacent. You dip your hardtack in it to soften it. It helps. Barely. Mostly it just turns your spoon into a delivery system for warm depression. There's no fruit. Scurvy is a real concern. You haven't tasted citrus in months. You've started dreaming about oranges. Whole dreams where you peel them slowly. Feel the juice run down your hands. Smell that sharp sweetness. Then wake up with your hand in a bowl of cold lard and then someone yelling about a missing spoon. The disappointment hurts more than your stomach. As for beverages, forget coffee. You've heard rumours of it. Maybe the officers have some. Maybe someone smuggled a bag in from a loyalist town, but down here in the mud. You're lucky if you get something warm. Most mornings it's water, if it hasn't frozen solid overnight. Sometimes it's beer, weak, lukewarm, and brewed in a barrel that's also used for washing socks. You drink it anyway, because it won't kill you as fast as the water might. If you're somewhere well supplied, which you never are, you might get molasses. A spoonful, maybe, poured onto your hardtack to make it slightly less soul-destroying. It tastes like burnt sugar and failure, and it sticks to your fingers for the rest of the day. If you're feeling wild, you lick it off in secret like it's a sin. It kind of is. Rations don't arrive consistently. You might eat today, you might not. You might get double rations because Jenkins died, and the sergeant decided to split his share, instead of burying it with him. You might go 2 days without anything and be told to forage, which means dig through the woods and hope you can tell a poisonous mushroom from a delicious one before your liver shuts down. You've eaten grass. You've chewed bark. You've roasted beetles over a fire and pretended it was roast chicken. You've watched grown men argue over a rat carcass, then eat it like it was a holiday roast. You didn't judge them. You were jealous. There are no utensils. Maybe you have a spoon. Maybe you broke it last week and now use a splintered stick. Forks are for officers or people with intact hands. You slurp, scoop, and smear. You don't wipe your mouth. There's nothing to wipe it with. You just let the grease trail down your chin and join the ecosystem growing on your collar. Some men trade rations. One guy hates hardtack, another hates salt pork. You watched a man offer his boots for half a biscuit. Another tried to barter his musket for a bottle of cider and a boiled egg. He got court-martialed. Not because he tried to trade the musket, because he forgot to clean it first. Mealtime isn't social. It's quiet, focused. Everyone hunched over their bowls, chewing like their jaws are on a timer, staring into the middle distance, like they're trying to remember what dignity felt like. No one talks. No one jokes. You're too hungry for words. You just eat, or you don't, and then you move on. Food poisoning is common, not in the, oh, my stomach feels weird way. In the, I've been vomiting for 3 hours and can't feel my legs way. You've seen a man go from fine to funeral in 24 hours. He ate something green. Might have been cabbage. Might have been whatever lives under the latrine trench. There's no refrigeration. Meat spoils fast. Bread moulds faster. You've bitten into something that crunched and realised too late it was moving. You didn't spit it out. You needed the protein. And this is all before noon. This is just the start of your day. You eat your chalky biscuit, drink your warm beer, and pack up your gear, all while trying to ignore the fact that your body is slowly consuming itself. Your muscles ache from hunger. Your stomach gnaws at itself. You feel dizzy, light-headed. You trip over your own feet while standing still. And then you're told to march. You want to sit. You want to lie down. You want to eat something that wasn't scraped off a boot or boiled in a bucket that used to hold gunpowder. But there's no time, no options, no excuses. You shoulder your musket. Your stomach growls again. The guy next to you groans and clutches his gut like something inside him just gave up. Then the drumbeat starts. Time to move. Because nothing says freedom like a 16-mile march on a stomach full of salted fat and disappointment. You've eaten your hardtack. You've swallowed your pork grease. You've listened to your stomach groan in betrayal. Now you're standing in formation, trying not to pass out while an officer reads your marching orders off a crumpled piece of paper, like he didn't just make them up 30 seconds ago. You're headed somewhere. You don't know exactly where. No one does. It could be 5 miles. Could be 20. Could be a loop straight back to the mud hole you just slept in. That's the genius of Revolutionary War logistics. You're going places. You just don't know why. The order is always the same. Pack up. We move at once. There's no timeline, no ETA, no morale boost. Just a grunt, a curse, and the sound of grown men shifting weight like condemned cattle, waiting for the bell to ring. You shoulder your musket, which feels heavier every day, and grab your gear, which is tied together with rope, string, and the thin hope that your spine doesn't give out halfway through the march. Your pack contains exactly what you need to survive. 1 shirt, 1 mouldy blanket, a cracked tin cup, some ammo, a hat you're not convinced is yours, and maybe a spare pair of socks that can legally be classified as a biohazard. That's it. No luxuries, no comfort items, no good luck charms. Someone once brought a Bible. He used it for kindling 2 weeks later, during a rainstorm in Delaware. He didn't even feel bad. The first step is the worst. Your feet, already mangled from days of standing, slipping, and stumbling through mud, remind you that they hate you. Your blisters have blisters. The soles of your feet are raw, cracked, and permanently damp. If you're lucky, you've wrapped them in strips of cloth. If you're unlucky, you're marching barefoot again, because your boots finally gave out last week, after 1 too many creek crossings, and now resemble leather sandals held together by pure, uncut desperation. You try to ignore the pain. That works for about 30 seconds. Then your arches start screaming. Your calves tighten. Your knees grind. Your hips pop. You're not even an hour in, and already you're moving like a man 30 years older than you, which, in 1776, makes you about 25. The line snakes forward. Uneven terrain, endless tree roots, mud patches the size of lakes, and the occasional dead animal keep things exciting. You march through grass, gravel, marsh, and whatever passes for a road in this era, which is really just a well-worn depression in the ground, filled with stagnant water, horse manure, and the occasional wagon wheel left behind by someone who gave up and walked home. There's no rhythm, no music, no cadence, just the slap of boots, the shuffle of bare feet, and the collective sigh of a group of men who all made the same bad decision, and now can't afford to undo it. A drummer may appear occasionally, banging a tune that sounds like motivation, but feels like mockery. You hate that drum. Everyone does, even the guy playing it. Your musket slaps against your back with every step. You can't adjust it because both hands are busy holding up your pack, your trousers, or your dignity, whichever is slipping fastest. The strap digs into your shoulder. Your neck cramps. Your spine aches. You shift the weight. That just transfers the pain to another limb. There's no water break. No snack break. No, "Are you okay back there, buddy?" You keep moving until someone collapses or dies. Sometimes both. When that happens, the column just flows around them, like blood around a clot. If the man's lucky, a couple of his friends will drag him into the shade and leave him there with a canteen and a pat on the head. If not, he'll be found 2 days later by a raccoon and a priest, whichever gets there first. You start sweating around mile 3, not a healthy sweat, the sickly kind, the kind that smells like fatigue and rot. Your clothes stick to your body in all the worst ways. Your waistband digs into your side. Your shirt rubs your nipples raw. Your thighs, God help your thighs. The chafing reaches biblical levels. You start walking like a man who's lost a jewel with a wasp nest. You try to adjust. It only makes it worse. The sun beats down, relentless and smug. There's no shade on the path. Just you, the dirt, and the guy next to you who breathes through his mouth and smells like a compost heap on fire. You start to hallucinate around mile 6. You see water that isn't there. You see a tree that turns out to be Jenkins, pausing to throw up behind a stump. You smell something vaguely like pie. It's not pie. It's your imagination giving you false hope to delay the collapse. Someone starts singing. They always do. It's never good. Just the same verse of some folk tune repeated over and over until everyone wants to beat him with his own canteen. Eventually the singing stops, usually after the guy walks into a low-hanging branch and knocks himself out. No one helps. Everyone's just quietly grateful for the silence. You stop briefly to piss, or you try. Your body's so dehydrated, all you can do is stand in a bush and wait for gravity to take over. It doesn't. You move on. The bush didn't deserve your failure. Around mile 10, your feet start to go numb. That's good. That means you're beyond pain. That means the body's giving up on keeping you updated. You keep walking. You don't know how. Muscle memory, maybe. Maybe spite. Maybe it's just easier than falling over and explaining to your sergeant why you decided to sit down in the middle of a revolutionary movement. By mile 13, you're delirious. You're sure you've been walking for 3 days. The sun's moved. The trees all look the same. You've passed the same pile of rocks twice. Or maybe it's a different pile. You stopped paying attention hours ago. You've bitten your tongue and didn't notice. There's blood in your mouth. Or is that just the pork grease rising back up for a second opinion? You finally stop around mile 15. Not because the day's done, just because someone up the chain of command decided it's time to camp again. The site is just another field. Slightly flatter, slightly drier, slightly less covered in manure than the one you left. Maybe. You don't even check. You just drop where you're told, collapse into a vague, sitting shape, and immediately regret being conscious. You take your boots off, or peel your feet out of whatever's left of them, and stare in silence at the damage. Blisters the size of thumbs, toenails that stop trying, toes that have turned a worrying shade of purple. You don't ask for help. There is none. You just smear a little animal fat on the worst spots and hope the rats leave you alone tonight. Dinner comes, if it comes. It tastes like chalk and sadness. You eat it without tasting. You chew because it's something to do. You drink water that smells like moss and pray your stomach doesn't revolt again. Jenkins is already dry heaving. He always is. And then, as the sun disappears behind the trees and the camp settles into a soft chorus of coughs and snoring, you lie down in your same filthy blanket on the same damp ground and prepare to do it all over again. Because tomorrow you march again. Where? Doesn't matter. Why? No one's sure. How far? Far enough to break something you didn't know you had? You've survived the march, barely. You've eaten your daily ration of salted sorrow. You've peeled off your boots and checked that most of your toes are still where you left them. Now, nature calls. Not gently, not politely, but with the urgency of someone banging on a locked door. The kind of urgency that makes you briefly consider whether dying might actually be a better option than finding somewhere to relieve yourself in 1776. Let's get one thing straight. There is no bathroom. There is no latrine in the way your modern brain understands it. No seat, no paper, no handled flush, and definitely no quiet background music to distract you from the horror of your own biology. What you have instead is dirt, maybe a trench, if someone remembered to dig it, maybe a pit, if the sergeant yelled loud enough. More often than not, it's just walk that direction until the smell becomes unbearable, then dig. You grab a shovel. Except there isn't one. The camp has 3, and they're all being used to dig defensive ditches, bury food waste, or cover whatever Jenkins did behind the quartermaster's tent. So you improvise. Maybe it's a stick. Maybe it's a bayonet. Maybe it's the bottom of your tin cup, which you will absolutely not be drinking out of ever again. You find a spot, far enough from camp to avoid judgment, but not so far that you risk getting mistaken for a deserter and shot. The ground is hard, always. Even when it's wet, it fights you. Roots, rocks, and frozen soil make every hole a battle. You scrape at the earth with whatever you've got, sweating and swearing while trying not to soil yourself mid-dig. It's not elegant. It's not quick. It's barely effective. Eventually, you get something that passes for a shallow grave, and you pray gravity does the rest. Then comes the act itself. No stall, no privacy. Just you, your shame, and the occasional squirrel making uncomfortably prolonged eye contact. You lower your trousers, hoping the wind doesn't pick up mid-process, and squat like your ancestors did, back when their greatest enemy was wolves, not dysentery. You try to relax. It's impossible. Every sound in the woods becomes a potential disaster. A snapped twig could be a fellow soldier, or a deer, or a British scout. You once panicked mid-squat when a chipmunk ran across your foot. You clenched so hard you pulled something in your lower back. That pain never went away. There's no toilet paper. That concept is about a century too early for you. Instead you choose between leaves, grass, or whatever cloth you can spare, which, let's be honest, is none. The wrong leaf means a rash that lasts for weeks. You learned that the hard way. You still have the scars. Some men use pages from a book if they have one. You once used a letter from your sister. Sorry, Sarah. Desperation doesn't respect sentiment. And when you're done, you cover the hole, loosely, if at all, and shuffle back to camp, hoping no one saw, hoping you don't smell worse than you did before, and praying whatever touched your hand wasn't alive. You wipe your hands on your pants, or a tree, or not at all. Hygiene's a dream out here, and everyone knows it. If you're lucky, The camp has a designated latrine zone. It's a trench, maybe 2 feet deep, lined with boards or logs if someone's feeling fancy. You squat shoulder to shoulder with the rest of the militia, making brief, uncomfortable eye contact between curses and grunts. There's no separation, no doors, just a row of men trying to pretend this is normal. You don't talk, you don't look around, you just do your business and leave. The smell is indescribable. Not just feces, it's layered. There's the sour tang of urine, the metallic whiff of blood from whoever's bleeding internally today, and the unmistakable scent of rot from waste that wasn't buried deep enough. The flies live here now. Big ones. Bold ones. They land on your face and dare you to stop them. Rain doesn't help. It turns the latrine into a bubbling stew of human disaster. You've slipped. You've seen others slip. Once, a man fell in up to his thighs. He came out crying. We burned his clothes. He still marches with the unit, but no one talks to him anymore. Some memories don't wash off. In winter, everything freezes. That sounds good. Less smell, more solid ground. It's not. You still have to squat. You still have to dig. Only now, the ground fights back harder. You try to break through the frost layer and end up bouncing off it with your shovel like a man trying to dig through iron. Eventually, you give up and go on the surface. That pile, that mound, that frozen cluster of misery behind your tent, that's not snow. In summer, the stench intensifies. Heat wakes it up. You've gagged mid-squat. You've seen men throw up while relieving themselves. One guy passed out. We thought he was dead. He just needed air. Ironically, he passed out from the lack of it. You're told not to go near the drinking water. Everyone's told, but the lines blur. Water runoff doesn't care about your boundaries. You've seen waste trickle downhill toward the stream. The same stream you filled your canteen from yesterday. You drink it anyway. What choice do you have? You hold your breath and pray the boiling was enough to kill whatever's floating in it. Every camp is different. Every latrine is worse. Some are dug right next to tents. Others are forgotten until you step in one by accident during a midnight stumble. You've walked through human waste more times than you can count. You've stopped looking at your boots. The colour doesn't come out anyway. Sometimes the latrines overflow, literally. After a storm, after a flood, after a long stay without rotation, you wake up to the smell and the realisation that it's under your bedroll. That's how you start your day, dragging your gear away from a rising tide of filth and wondering how your life fell so far, so fast. And you dream of outhouses, actual structures, 4 walls, a door, a seat, even a hole that's been reinforced. You once used one in a town and nearly wept from the luxury of sitting down without fear of being bitten, watched or shot. You didn't even need to go. You just sat there for 20 minutes, breathing through your mouth and pretending this was normal. But most of the time, you dig. Or you don't. Sometimes you just pick a tree, face away from camp, and pray no one recognises the back of your neck. Because when you're starving, sick, sleep-deprived, and covered in your own sweat, modesty dies long before your dignity. You think you'll get used to it. You don't. It never gets easier. It just becomes routine. Another hole, another squat, another moment alone with your decisions. And then you pull your pants back up, adjust your belt, and get ready to rejoin the cause. Because freedom apparently smells like that. You haven't eaten enough. That's the baseline condition of your life now. You're tired, filthy, and running on a combination of boiled salt pork and God's disinterest. Your stomach growls like something's trying to chew its way out. You're dizzy. Your hands shake when you lift your musket, and your vision blurs every time you stand up too fast. Perfect time for a firefight. You get the word in the worst way possible. A sudden sprint from a scout, a frantic whisper down the line, and then that familiar tone in your officer's voice. Short, clipped, tense. Form up. Form up means this is real. No drills. No fake charges. No ceremonial posturing. There are redcoats nearby. Actual trained British soldiers with uniforms that match, and guns that work, and boots that don't collapse in the rain. They're coming. Or maybe they're already here. Sometimes you don't even see them until you're already being shot at. You line up in formation, because that's what you've been told to do. Shoulder to shoulder, 5 ranks deep, your feet planted in mud that sucks at your soles like it wants you to stay. You clutch your musket. It's too heavy. It always is. The wood's swollen from moisture. The barrel's probably rusted. The flint's loose. You hope it fires. You don't expect it to. Your stomach cramps. Hunger is a constant companion, but battle makes it worse. Your body knows it needs energy. It's searching for reserves you burned off weeks ago. You chew the inside of your cheek just to trick your brain into thinking food is on the way. It isn't. Ahead, somewhere beyond the smoke and the trees, you hear the fife and drum. British troops marching in step, disciplined, drilled. They don't look like you. They don't move like you. You're wearing half a coat and a hat you stole off a corpse. They're in full red regalia, polished buttons, crisp lines and clean boots. They look like an army. You look like a mob that lost a bar fight with the weather. Then the shooting starts. It's not cinematic. No heroic music. No slow motion charge. Just the crack of musket fire and the scream of someone a few feet to your left collapsing into the mud. Your ears ring instantly. The air smells like sulphur, blood, and burning leather. Smoke rolls across the field in thick white sheets, swallowing everything. You can't see who's firing at you. You can barely see your own hands. You fire your musket, or try to, pull the trigger. Nothing. Misfire. You reload as fast as you can, fumbling with the powder, the ball, the ramrod, your fingers numb and trembling. It takes 30 seconds to reload. If you're calm, you're not, see, your brain's screaming. Your hands are coated in sweat and ash. You drop the powder once and nearly cry. You finally fire. The kick rocks your shoulder. You don't know if you hit anyone. Probably not. Most shots miss. Accuracy isn't the point. Volume is. You reload, fire again. The barrel gets hot. The flint sparks into your face. You flinch and keep going. You don't stop unless someone orders it or you drop. Men around you are falling. Not dramatically. Just dropping. A twitch, a sound, a collapse. Some scream. Some don't. You hear someone sobbing between volleys. Could be you. Could be the guy next to you who just took a ball to the thigh and is trying to hold his leg together with both hands in a prayer. You can't help him. There's no time. You kneel to reload. A bullet zips over your head. Another kicks up dirt near your foot. Your instincts say run. Your orders say stay. You stay. Because moving makes you a target, and running means someone might shoot you in the back for cowardice. That's how things work out here. The enemy's not the only one with bullets. Then the order comes. Advance. Advance? Really? You're half dead from hunger and sleep deprivation. Your musket's still warm. Your boots are slipping in the blood-slick mud. But you move forward. You all do. Not fast, not brave, just mechanically. Like corpses that forgot to lie down. You climb over a fallen log, almost slip, catch yourself, and push ahead. The line inches forward. The redcoats are in sight now. Straight backs, gleaming bayonets, faces unreadable. They don't break formation. You envy that. Your line looks like laundry blowing in the wind. Then it's close combat. Bayonets out. There's no strategy now. No finesse. Just chaos. You stab. You scream. You block with your musket stock. You punch a man in the face with a fist full of powder and rage. Someone tackles you. You roll in the dirt, fists flying, teeth bared. You don't know if the man you're fighting is dead when you stand up. You don't check. Your side wins. Or so they say. The redcoats pull back. Not far. Not for long. But for now, the field is yours. You look around. Bodies everywhere. Some twitching. Some not. The smoke's thinning. But it's not gone. It never is. You breathe it in with every gasp, your lungs aching, your mouth dry, your teeth gritted against the taste of iron and bile. You limp back to the line. Or what's left of it. Maybe half your unit still stands. The rest are gone, dead, dying, or screaming into the dirt. The officer counts heads, shouts names. You answer when yours is called, your voice cracks. You swallow and hope you don't throw up. Again? Then you're told to dig in. Rebuild the line. Stack the wounded. Bury the dead. Eat, if you can find anything. You open your pack. There's a bit of hardtack left. It's wet. You eat it anyway. You don't chew. You just let it dissolve in your cheek, while you stare at a body that used to be someone you shared a blanket with last week. Someone passes you a canteen. You drink. It tastes like rust and ashes. Someone else lights a pipe with shaking hands. He offers you a puff. You take it. The tobacco's mouldy. You don't care. It dulls the edge. Just a little. The medic arrives, late as always. He has a saw, some rags, a bottle of something flammable, and not much else. You look away while he starts cutting. You try not to listen. You fail. The screaming goes through you like shrapnel. You wish it was you instead. Then you take it back. You sit in the dirt until the sun goes down, too tired to talk, too numb to pray. Someone asks if you think you'll get rations tonight. You shrug. No one believes it anymore. The last supply wagon got stuck in the mud 40 miles back, or was raided, or just never existed. The stars come out. They don't comfort you. They just remind you there's no roof, no walls, and no reason to believe tomorrow will be any different. You lie down, musket by your side, stomach empty, blood on your boots, yours, someone else's, doesn't matter. You stare at the sky until your eyes blur, and your mind drifts somewhere less loud. Sleep doesn't come easy, but you don't resist it. Because tomorrow, they might ask you to do it again. And you will. You're not a soldier. Not really. You're a guy holding a musket and hoping it works when it matters. That's the foundation of military service in 1776. There's no boot camp, no weapons technician, no warranty, just you. A weapon designed by sadists, and a prayer that when things get loud, it doesn't explode in your hands or refuse to fire like it's offended by violence. Let's talk about the musket. Specifically, the Charleville or the Brown Bess, depending on who handed you yours. Both roughly the same long, heavy, inaccurate metal pipe strapped to a wood plank and passed off as modern weaponry. It weighs around 10 pounds, unless it's soaked in rain, then it's more, always more. It doesn't balance well, it doesn't aim well, it just exists. An awkward, clunky necessity you're forced to drag through mud, forests, and freezing rivers like it's your emotionally distant best friend. You clean it, sometimes, when there's time, which there never is. And even when you do, clean is a loose term. You ram a cloth down the barrel with a stick, swirl it around, cough from the soot, and declare it good enough. It's never good enough. Black powder fouling builds up inside with every shot like a slow-burning time bomb. By your third volley in combat, your barrel's a chimney. By your fifth, it might as well be filled with cement. Let's go through the process. You want to fire your musket? Good luck. First, you bite open a cartridge, a paper tube full of gunpowder and a musket ball. You tear it with your teeth, even though your teeth are already rotting and loose. Then you pour some powder into the pan, which is the tiny tray that makes the gun go boom. You close the frizzen, that's the lid that's supposed to keep the powder dry. It doesn't. Next, you dump the rest of the powder down the barrel, followed by the paper and the ball, and you ram it all the way to the bottom with your ramrod, which is bent, stuck or missing. If it's nighttime, cold or raining, your fingers are numb, your powder is damp, and your vision is garbage. This process takes 30 seconds on a good day. You won't have a good day. Then you raise the musket, cock the flintlock, aim, a waste of time, but we'll pretend, and pull the trigger. If you're lucky, the flint sparks, the pan ignites, the powder goes off, and the lead ball launches out of the barrel in the general direction of whoever you hate most. If you're unlucky, which is often, the flint doesn't spark, or the powder fizzles, or the whole thing backfires and burns your hand. Misfire rates are high. Some estimate 1 in 5. You pull the trigger, and the only sound is a click. Or worse, a pop, no bang. And now you've got a live round jammed in a metal tube that's as trustworthy as a raccoon with a bayonet. You try to clear it, you fail. You jab the touch hole with a wire. Still nothing. Now you're in combat with a 6-foot club, and the crushing realization that your life depends on 18th century mechanics and humidity. Accuracy is a joke. These aren't rifles. The barrels are smooth, meaning your musket ball wobbles through the air like a drunken bee. Beyond 50 yards, you're guessing. At 100, you're praying. At 200, you're wasting powder. The real purpose of muskets isn't precision, it's volume. You line up hundreds of men and fire volleys, hoping the sheer mass of projectiles lands somewhere useful. And let's not forget, reloading while standing in an open field being shot at is a deeply flawed system. Every time you pour powder into your pan, a spark from someone else's shot might ignite it early. That happened to Jenkins. Lit himself up like a campfire. Didn't scream. Just stared at his fingers while the flesh slid off. When your musket does work, it kicks like a mule. The recoil shoves your shoulder back, especially if you're skinny. And let's face it, everyone is now. You're bruised, sore, and limping from your last march. And now your dominant arm is half numb from 3 volleys of freedom. The heat is another problem. Black powder burns hot. After a few shots, the barrel is searing to the touch. You learned that the hard way when you reached to adjust your sling and seared a perfect line across your palm. The scar's still there, a permanent reminder that you're not trained for this. None of you are. And yet you carry it everywhere. Through rivers, over mountains, into bed. You sleep with it, because if it goes missing, you'll be flogged or shot or both. You clean it when you can. You oil the lock, polish the wood, even though the thing has betrayed you more times than you can count. It's not a weapon anymore. It's part of you. A splintered, smoke-stained, semi-functional extension of your malnourished will to live. Then there's the bayonet. a metal spike you attach to the barrel for close combat. It's long, sharp, and completely terrifying, especially when someone's charging at you with it. Most people don't survive bayonet wounds, not because the stab itself is fatal, but because 18th century medicine is mostly guesses and saws. One jab to the gut, and you'll be dying for the next 3 days in a tent that smells like boiled wool and open wounds. You practice with your bayonet. You lunge at straw dummies and try not to skewer your foot. In real battle, you stab and hope you're not stabbing someone on your own side. In the chaos, formations break down. Smoke blinds you, uniforms blur. One wrong move and you've just impaled a guy who shared his biscuit with you yesterday. Musket drills are constant. Load, ram, prime, fire. Over and over until your thumbs are blistered and your ears ring for days. No ear protection. Just the sound of gunfire echoing in your skull like a punishment from God. Half the men in your regiment are partially deaf. The other half are on their way. But the real problem with your musket isn't its weight, its inaccuracy, or its tendency to misfire. It's that you depend on it. You put your faith in it, because it's all you have. There's no backup, no sidearm, no second chance. You go into battle with this one device and pray it doesn't decide today is the day it becomes a metal pipe of bad intentions. You've seen men die with loaded muskets in their hands. They were still reloading when the shot hit, or the lock failed, or they dropped it, bent the barrel, and couldn't fire again. They had weapons, they had powder, they had grit, but they didn't have luck. And in this war, luck outranks everyone. Still, you keep it close, you wipe it down, you sleep with it, you whisper at it sometimes, not prayers, just desperate little bargains. Just fire once more, you mutter. Just don't jam, just this time. And sometimes it listens. Sometimes it doesn't. You never know which version you'll get. And yet, you march with it anyway. Because if the musket fails, you still fight. With the butt. With the bayonet. With your fists. With rocks. Because the war doesn't wait for you to reload. You got hit. Maybe it was a musket ball, maybe shrapnel, maybe you tripped over a fence post while running in the wrong direction and stabbed yourself with your own bayonet. Doesn't matter. You're bleeding now, and someone's yelling for the surgeon. The surgeon. That's a generous word. He's not a doctor. Not in any modern sense. He's a man with a sharp knife, a stained apron, and a look in his eyes like he hasn't slept since the war started. He has no degree, no license, no scruples. What he does have is a box of tools that smell like rust and despair, and an assistant whose job is mostly to hold you down while you scream. You're carried to the medical tent, which is really just canvas flapping in the wind, held up by poles that also serve as drying racks for bloody bandages. The ground is already wet with something you hope is rain. It isn't. There's no floor, no table, just straw, cloth, and the stink of old wounds. You lie down, or are dropped, onto a mat that's soaked through with other people's pain. Flies buzz everywhere. They're part of the staff now. The surgeon doesn't swat them away. He's too busy cutting open a man's leg while smoking a pipe and muttering to himself. The man on the floor is biting into a leather strap so hard his teeth are leaving impressions. That's the anaesthesia, not morphine, not chloroform, not even opium. Just leather, alcohol, and sheer white-knuckled agony. You try to sit up. A hand pushes you back down. "Don't move," someone says. You weren't going to. Every movement makes your vision sparkle with pain. Your arm is swelling. Your leg is bleeding. Your side feels like someone dropped an anvil onto it, and the only thing you've been offered so far is a swig of rum that burned like betrayal and left you feeling even more nauseous than before. They examine the wound. It takes 2 seconds. There's no scan, no x-ray, just a squint, a grunt, and a decision. Clean it, stitch it, or cut it off. Those are the options. Infection is everywhere. Gangrene is the real enemy. Once it sets in, it spreads fast, turning flesh to jelly and blood to poison. They don't wait. If your limb looks questionable, they remove it like it's spoiled meat. You see the saw before you hear the explanation. It's not surgical. It's just a carpenter's saw with a wiped blade. Maybe. The handle is worn from use. There's no gentle prep talk. No countdown. No bedside manner. Just hold him, and the sound of someone behind you throwing up as the sawing begins. You scream. Of course you do. Everyone does. The blade grinds through flesh first. A wet, tearing noise. Then bone, which makes a sound you'll never forget. Not in this life. It crunches, snaps, vibrates in your spine like a tuning fork of horror. You pass out, if you're lucky. When you wake up, your body's colder, lighter. Something's missing. There's a stump where your leg used to be, wrapped in bandages that are already soaking through. No antiseptic, no sterile gauze, just linen strips tied tight and prayed over. You don't even know who cut it. He's moved on. There's a line, no antibiotics. If the wound gets infected, and it will, your options are more sawing or die. Fever sets in fast, chills, vomiting, delirium. You talk to people who aren't there. You sweat through your bedroll. You see things in the shadows. The surgeon checks you once a day maybe, taps your skin, sniffs your breath, shrugs. Could go either way, he says, like he's choosing a tavern for lunch. If your wound isn't amputated, it's cauterized. They heat an iron rod over a fire until it glows, then press it to your flesh while 2 men hold you down. The hiss is instant. The smell is unforgettable. Your skin bubbles. Your nerves scream. You black out from the pain or the smell or both. Then come the maggots. That's not a joke. It's a treatment. If the wound is bad and there's no saw to spare, they'll let the flies do the work. Maggots eat dead tissue. They keep the rot at bay. You lie there, watching your body squirm and writhe under your own skin, and you're told it's a good sign. You don't feel lucky. You feel violated by nature. Stitches are done with thread that used to hold tents together. The needle is a thick, curved spike dunked in rum or nothing. No local numbing. Just a quick jab, a hard pull, and a line of crude sutures that look like a drunk cobbler did them with one eye closed. They itch. They leak. They split open during the next march. And then you're back in the tent again. For smaller wounds, there's ointment. A mixture of animal fat, herbs, and whatever the camp's herbalist hasn't accidentally poisoned someone with yet. It smells like spoiled butter and feels like warm wax. It attracts flies. You smear it on anyway. It's all there is. There's also bloodletting. Still fashionable, still wrong. If you're running a fever, they slice open your forearm and drain a pint of blood into a bowl. Balance the humours, they say, even though your humours are currently soaking through your pants and attracting beetles. And then there's the aftercare, which doesn't exist. You recover in a tent surrounded by other moaning, festering, fever-slicked men who are just as likely to die from exposure as infection. There's no change of clothes, no clean sheets, no one to check your pulse. You lie there in your own filth, hoping someone remembers to bring water. The smell of the tent is indescribable. Rot, piss, blood, and smoke from the campfire used to boil tools. It's thick. It sticks to your clothes, your skin, your teeth. You carry it with you even after you leave. If you leave. You watch a man die from an ankle wound. Another from a chipped tooth that swelled into an abscess and burst in his throat. One guy just keeled over after sneezing too hard. They said it was his time. You believe it. Everyone here is on borrowed time. You learn to spot the signs. If someone goes quiet, stops eating, starts staring at nothing, they're not going to make it. No one says it. We just nod and move their blanket closer to the edge of the tent, so it's easier to drag them out later. There's no burial, just a hole. Shallow, unmarked. Someone mutters a prayer. No one listens. You survive, for now. Your wound scabs over. Your fever breaks. You're told to get up and rejoin the line. You're limping, shaking, half your strength gone. You ask for another day to rest. They hand you your musket. March, they say. And you do. Because in the Revolutionary War, if the bullet doesn't kill you, the cure just might. You've survived the march, survived the battle, survived the surgeon's tent. Barely. Now you're back at camp, which sounds like a break, until you actually get there and remember that camp life isn't rest. It's just a slower version of misery. The camp itself is never where it should be. It's either too close to swamps, too far from water, too exposed to wind, or conveniently placed next to a colony of mosquitoes the size of small birds. You pitch your tent, again, generous word, which is really just a piece of canvas tied between two sticks. It sags in the middle, leaks when it rains, and collapses if someone so much as sneezes too hard near it. Inside, you share your space with 3 to 6 other men, all of whom snore, cough, and sweat like they're in competition. There's no floor, just dirt. Wet, packed, uneven dirt that never fully dries, no matter how many times you try to fix it by spreading straw or laying down rotting boards. You sleep in a pile. There's no privacy, no boundaries. Your arm is under someone else's head. Someone else's leg is draped across your chest. You all pretend it's normal. The smell is the first thing to hit you. Always. It's not one thing. It's everything. Sweat, mould, smoke, blood, wet wool, and the sharp ammonia tang of a latrine that's too full and too close. You try not to breathe through your nose, but then you get dizzy and the cycle starts again. Nothing is fresh. Not the air, not the food, not even the wood you're trying to burn, which hisses and smokes like it resents being harvested. There's no quiet, ever. Even off the battlefield, camp is a living, breathing organism that wheezes and groans constantly. Someone's always shouting. Someone's always crying. A guy across the path is playing a fiddle that hasn't been in tune since last October. Another is talking in his sleep, reciting numbers like he's still counting bodies. You try to drown it out. You fail. Your duties don't end when you're off the line. There's firewood to chop, water to haul, trenches to dig, weapons to clean, clothes to scrub. Not that they ever come clean, just slightly less horrifying. You soak them in water that's already been used by 6 other men, and hope the mud was the worst thing on them. It wasn't. Mealtime is chaos. There's no kitchen, no cook, no coordination. Just a fire pit, a blackened pot, and whatever the quartermaster scrounged up that week. If there's flour, it turns into a gluey mess called fire cake, flour and water cooked on a rock and scraped off with a bayonet. If there's meat, it's probably spoiled. If there's beans, congratulations. You're going to spend the night both hungry and gassy, which your tent mates will not thank you for. Everything is always wet. Your tent, your socks, your blanket, your morale. Rain doesn't fall politely. It blasts sideways, seeps under canvas, and pulls in your boots. You try to dry things by the fire, but the smoke just makes them damp and smell like a burned shoe. You've accepted it. You'll die moist. Cold is constant, even in warmer months. There's always a draft, always a chill. You wake up with your teeth chattering and your fingers so stiff you can't make a fist. You huddle close to the fire until you start to feel something resembling sensation again. You try to warm your hands on a tin cup filled with boiled river water and powdered lies. Doesn't work. Nothing works. When it's not cold, it's hot. The kind of heat that makes your shirt stick to your back and your skin blister under your collar. You can't take your clothes off. Not unless you want to be eaten alive by bugs, judged by your comrades, or arrested for indecency. So you just sweat, profusely, constantly. Your socks become living entities. Your underarms smell like a taxidermy experiment gone wrong. You start to wonder if you've always been this damp. And then there are the bugs. They don't just visit, they move in. Mosquitoes, flies, lice, fleas, ticks, and other creatures with too many legs and too few manners. They bite, crawl, burrow. You scratch until you bleed. Then you scratch some more. You once lit a match near your blanket just to scare them off. You nearly set the whole camp on fire. No one blamed you. You write letters home when you can, not because you expect them to be delivered, but because pretending someone might read them is the closest thing to hope you've got. All is well, you write, because what else are you going to say? Dear Mother, the camp smells like old soup and despair. Jenkins is coughing blood again. Yesterday, I found a dead squirrel in my stew. Love, your son? You get bored, but not comfortably bored. Anxious, restless, teeth-grinding boredom. You've memorised the cracks in your tent pole. You've counted the knots in your blanket. You play dice with pebbles. You carve sticks into shapes that start looking like food. Then someone tells you the enemy might attack at night, and suddenly you're wide awake again, gripping your musket in the dark like it's going to save you. There's no entertainment. A guy might have a deck of cards, but he's missing half of them and won't let you touch the rest. Another guy hums hymns through his nose until someone hits him with a boot. Once, someone told a joke. Everyone laughed. Then we remembered Jenkins died that morning and went quiet again. You stare at the stars sometimes, not because it's peaceful, but because it's the only reminder that the sky still exists above all this. You wonder what time it is back home, if your family is eating dinner, if they think you're still alive. You hope they do. You hope they don't worry. You hope they never see a camp like this. Sometimes there's a preacher. He reads scripture, talks about sacrifice and glory. No one listens, not because they don't care, but because they're too tired to pretend it matters. If God's watching, he's doing it through a dirty lens and a window that doesn't open. Injury doesn't get you rest. If you can walk, you work. If you can hold a spoon, you're on cooking duty. If you can hold a musket, you're on watch. There's no such thing as recovery, just not dead yet. And hygiene? You already know better. Bathing is rare. The river's cold, filthy, and filled with upstream surprises. Your skin's itchy, flaky, covered in bug bites and something you hope isn't fungus. You smell yourself when you move. Other men smell you too. You all smell the same. It's not shameful anymore. It's just air. You fall asleep each night, not because you're tired, but because your body finally powers down like a dying lantern. You wrap yourself in your damp blanket, curl around your musket, and pray it doesn't rain, or freeze, or catch fire. You dream of dry socks, you wake up to shouting, camp life continues. It's winter now. Not the kind of winter where you sip cider and talk about your favourite snow memories. This is Revolutionary War winter. Valley Forge winter. The kind where you wake up, realise you still have your feet, and consider that a win. You arrive at Valley Forge in December. It's supposed to be the winter encampment, a place to rest, regroup, train. But all that implies shelter, supplies, and a plan. What you get instead is a patch of frozen forest, an officer pointing at a tree, and the same orders you've heard all year. Start digging! There are no barracks. You build your own hut. You and a dozen other frostbitten souls stack logs, slap on mud, and hope it holds. It doesn't. Not against the wind. Not against the snow. Not against the cold that creeps in through every crack and then settles into your bones like regret. You sleep on dirt, wrapped in the same blanket you've used since September. The one that's been soaked, frozen, and slept on by 2 other men who didn't make it past October. It doesn't warm you. It just dulls the edge of the cold long enough to let you sleep for a few hours before your feet go numb. And you wake up wondering if this is how trees feel right before they die. Your uniform is barely that. You've worn the same shirt for months. The fabric's thinned to the point where it could legally be called gauze. Your coat is patched, your breeches are torn, and your shoes, if you still have them, are more holes than leather. The soles flap when you walk. As the snow soaks through immediately, you've wrapped your feet in rags, then in more rags, then in hope. None of it works. Frostbite is common. So common it stops being alarming. Fingers turn grey, then black. Toes fall off quietly. No screaming. Just a man looking down at his foot and blinking as something small and frozen rolls out of his sock like a dropped button. You've seen it happen. You've felt it happening. One morning, you couldn't feel your left hand. You held it over a fire and didn't flinch. That's how you knew you were in trouble. There's no cure, no treatment. Just rub it, wrap it, and move on. You can't stop. You can't rest. The cold doesn't care. It works fast. Faster than you do. One bad night and a man can wake up half dead, stuck to the ground by the ice in his clothes. We lost 3 men in a week that way. Just froze where they slept. Food is worse here. You didn't think that was possible, but you were wrong. Rations are low. Supply lines are broken or frozen or non-existent. You go days without eating. When food does arrive, it's flour. Not bread. Just flour. You mix it with water, fry it on a shovel, and call it cake. It tastes like dust and lies. Meat is a rumour. Salt pork, when it appears, comes in grey slabs with a smell that warns you before your stomach does. You eat it anyway. Hunger trumps caution. We boiled a pair of boots once. Stripped the leather, scraped off the mould, simmered it for hours and drank the broth. Tasted like dirt and desperation, but it stayed down. You've eaten worse. Squirrels, rats, tree bark. Someone tried a pine cone. It didn't end well. You chew slowly, not because you're savouring, but because your jaw hurts from the cold. Your lips crack when you move them. Blood freezes on your chin. You don't wipe it off. It might warm you. Water isn't easier. The rivers are iced over. You melt snow, but it takes forever, and tastes like smoke from whatever wood scraps you're burning that day. Fence posts, furniture, parts of the mess hall. Someone once found a dead bird and tossed it in the pot. Added flavour, he said. We didn't argue. Illness spreads fast. Typhus, dysentery, influenza. Coughs echo through the camp all night. Deep, wet, rattling sounds that tell you who's not going to make it to morning. You try to stay warm, dry, isolated. You fail at all three. Blankets are shared. Huts are crowded. And once one man starts vomiting, it's just a matter of time. You try to keep clean. You fail at that too. There's no soap, no extra shirts. Just snow. Your only bath. You rub it on your skin until it stings. It doesn't help. You still itch. Your skin cracks, peels, bleeds. Lice live in your collar. Fleas live in your hair. You scratch until you sleep. And then scratch some more. Training continues. Because somehow, this is still a military camp. Baron von Steuben arrives with drills, discipline, and very little patience. He yells at you in 3 languages, waves a stick, and expects you to execute manoeuvres in snow up to your knees with one boot and a musket that froze shut 3 days ago. But you do it. Badly. Because it's that or sit in your hut and listen to Jenkins die. Time stops having meaning. Days blur. You mark them by frostbite reports and latrine collapses. You forget what it feels like to be warm. You dream about soup. You wake up to your fingers stuck together with ice. Letters come occasionally, mostly bad news. Someone at home has died. Someone else is sick. A cousin got drafted. A neighbour joined the Loyalists. Your mother says to stay strong. You fold a letter and use it to line your hat. Every morning, roll call includes the dead. The sergeant calls their names. No answer. We nod. He makes a mark. Sometimes we bury them. Sometimes we don't. The ground's too hard. The bodies stay under snowbanks, marked with sticks and memory. Still you keep going, because there's no alternative. No one's coming to save you. Not Congress, not your general, not your God. You march in place to stay warm. You hold your musket close. You talk to it like a friend. Not because you expect it to fire, just because it's something to hold on to. And eventually the snow starts to melt. A little. Slowly. Mud returns. The flies come back. The sickness stays. But now you're still standing. Barely. With 1 foot half dead, a cough you can't shake, and hunger that's become part of your personality. That's Valley Forge, and you're still here. You've marched through swamps, fought in fields, and watched your friends die in the snow. You've survived starvation, amputation, and things you can't even name growing inside your boots. But now comes the truly bitter part. The realization that the country you're bleeding for doesn't seem particularly interested in making sure you don't die in vain. Welcome to the politics of revolution, a swirling storm of ego, paperwork, and very expensive wigs arguing over whether or not you deserve shoes. It starts with rumours. Always rumours. Congress is sending money. New rations are coming. They're voting on back pay. And for one wild second, your brain lights up with something like hope. Then someone else, someone older, someone missing a toe or 3, reminds you what that actually means. Nothing. Congress couldn't organise a lunch, let alone a functioning supply line. They can't even agree if you technically exist. You're not paid. That's not a punchline. It's just the truth. Your promised wages were a few dollars a month, maybe some land after the war. In theory. In practice, you're on month 11 with nothing in your pockets but lint, broken buttons, and a rock you picked up to use as a spoon. The officers are paid. Sometimes. They write letters. file requests, send runners, and wait. You? You've got no time for that. You're too busy trying to not freeze to death. And when you do ask about your pay, they tell you you'll be compensated in due course, which means never, or after the war, or if you happen to still be alive when someone finally opens a ledger in Philadelphia. Meanwhile, the people back home, the ones who didn't sign up, who didn't volunteer, who didn't get drafted after too many pints and a very aggressive pamphlet, they're doing fine. They're raising prices, hoarding supplies, selling your own uniforms back to the army at a profit. War profiteering, they call it. Very patriotic. Some men desert. You don't blame them. You've thought about it. Everyone has. What stops you is the idea of being hunted like a dog, branded or hung, that, and the fact that you don't have anywhere to go. Your family can't take you in. They're broke too. Your farm's overgrown. Your house might be ashes. Your options are fight and starve, or flee and starve. So you stay. You're told it's about freedom. You've read the flyers, heard the speeches. No taxation without representation. Catchy. Would be more convincing if anyone in Congress actually represented you. If you're poor, if you don't own land, if you can't write a letter without borrowing someone else's last name, good luck. Your voice in the new republic is about as valuable as the soles of your boots, worn thin and ignored. You've seen the propaganda too. Broadsheets pinned to trees. Woodcuts of heroic farmers facing off against redcoats. Muscular, defiant, clean. None of them look like you. You're skinny, pale, lice-bitten, coughing into a rag that used to be a sock. But apparently, you're the face of liberty, just not the one they'll draw. There's also this magical phrase they keep using, the cause. Everyone invokes it. Do it for the cause. Suffer for the cause. Die, but quietly, for the cause. What they don't tell you is what the cause actually looks like after the smoke clears. You get a country. Maybe. You get freedom, sort of. You get land if you survive and they remember to write your name down correctly. And if they don't? That's unfortunate. But paperwork's hard when your desk is 200 miles from the front line and your ink's frozen solid. Officers give speeches. Congress sends letters. You line up, half frozen, half starved, to listen to men in coats worth more than your entire town tell you how proud they are. You don't hear most of it. You're too busy trying not to fall asleep, standing up. And anyway, what are they going to say? Thanks for giving your toes to the revolution. Here's some fire cake and a debt we won't repay. Morale officers, yes, that's a real thing, occasionally show up. They read excerpts from pamphlets, tell stories about European revolutions, and try to convince you that you're part of history. You nod politely. You don't want to hear about philosophers in Paris? You want socks? Sometimes someone mentions liberty, that's the big one. The reason you're supposed to smile through trench foot and starvation. You're fighting for liberty, they say, while holding a cup of coffee imported from a city that still has supply routes. You're not sure liberty means what they think it does. Because so far, liberty looks a lot like rationing gunpowder and begging God not to let you lose any more teeth before your next charge. There's division too, not just between rich and poor, officer and soldier, but among yourselves. Loyalists, rebels, undecideds. You once shared a fire with a man who defected 3 weeks later. You heard about it second-hand. No one said anything. He'd lost 2 brothers in a raid and just stopped believing it was worth it. You didn't argue. you understood. And then there's the worst insult. The idea that you're disposable. That even if you die, someone else will pick up your musket and keep going. They say it like it's noble. It doesn't feel noble. It feels like you could vanish tomorrow and be replaced by another poor soul with the same worn-out coat and the same missing boot heel. So, yeah, politics. You came here thinking it was about standing up to tyranny. Now you're realising it's also about sitting down for meetings, inflating budgets, and forgetting the names of the people doing the actual dying. They speak your name in speeches and then spell it wrong on casualty lists. Still, and this is the part you don't like admitting, you keep going. Not for them. Not for Congress. Not for promises scribbled in ink by men who wouldn't last 10 minutes in a trench. But maybe for each other. Maybe for Jenkins before he bled out. Maybe for the man you carried off the field last week. Maybe because at this point, turning back would mean all this was for nothing. Or maybe because you're too tired to stop. Either way, morning's coming, and no one's been paid. By now, you've accepted that war is not a noble pursuit. It's not glorious. It's not orderly. It's not inspiring. It's cold, wet, violent, and confusing. But worst of all, and you're only realising this now, it's deeply, profoundly crowded. You don't fight alone. You suffer surrounded. And the men suffering with you, they are, without exception, walking disasters. Let's start with the drunks. There are a lot of them. Some arrived that way. Some got there, over time, you understand. After marching for 12 hours, eating something that used to be a shoe, and sleeping next to a man whose cough could peel paint. You'd drink tree sap if it came in a bottle. Most men settle for raw rum, weak beer, or whatever's fermenting behind the mess tent in an old boot. You've had worse. Drinking is a coping mechanism, or an act of rebellion, or just the only entertainment left. But either way, drunk soldiers are a permanent feature. They slur orders, stumble into the latrine, and sometimes wake up in the wrong camp, curled up next to a horse that died 3 days ago. The officers try to stop it, with punishment, with speeches, with less effective punishments. But nothing works. There's a reason the quartermaster guards the rum more closely than the ammunition. Then there are the deserters. They're less common, but they haunt you like shadows. You never hear them leave. You just wake up and someone's gone. Their pack's still there, maybe a note, maybe not. The fire's lower. The silence is heavier. You don't talk about it. Not really. Because if you acknowledge it, you'll start thinking about doing it too. Desertion is punishable by death. You know this. Everyone knows this. But that doesn't stop anyone. Hunger makes you brave. Fear makes you fast. And promises, the ones Congress made about pay, food, land, make you reckless once you realise they were lies. So men vanish. Slipping into the woods, heading home, heading anywhere that isn't here. Some make it, most don't. Caught, hanged, flogged, or just frozen stiff in the wilderness, trying to reach the next town over. Still, you don't judge them. You just try not to look at the rope. There are the optimists, somehow. The guys who still whistle in the morning. Who think every new general is going to turn things around. You envy them, but not really. Because you know the whistle stops eventually. It always does. Usually after frostbite, or watching a friend bleed out in a ditch while someone reads scripture over him using a fake accent. No one keeps hope here for long. It's too expensive. You've got the old veterans, men who fought in earlier skirmishes, who've survived a full year or more. They don't talk much. They sit near the edge of the fire, sharpening knives that don't need sharpening and muttering about names you don't recognise. Their eyes don't blink often. Their hands are always doing something. Stitching, carving, counting invisible things. You respect them. You're also a little afraid of them. There's always that one guy who won't stop talking about going home. How many acres he'll get. How he's going to marry the girl who waited. How his brother already built a house on a hill. You nod. You smile. You don't believe a word. No one who talks that much about the future survives. That's a rule. His name is already being whispered by the campfire, like a warning. Then there's the gambler. Somehow, every unit has one. He's got dice, cards, maybe even a tiny pouch of coins from a time when money still had meaning. He bets on everything. Who will be on guard duty? Which horse will drop dead next? How many days until the next skirmish? He always wins, until he doesn't. Then he loses his blanket, then his boots. Eventually his mind. You once saw a man gamble away his share of beans. It turned into a fistfight. Both men lost teeth. No one got beans. Speaking of horses, they're dying, constantly. From cold, exhaustion, infection, overwork, or simply giving up. You've seen one collapse mid-march. Tongue lolling, eyes wide, steam rising from its body like its soul was trying to escape before it hit the ground. No one even flinched. The officer looked at it, looked at you and said, "You're pulling the cart now?" You did. For 10 miles. The horses that are still alive. Miserable. Their ribs stick out. Their hooves are cracked. Their tails are knotted with ice. You try to care for them. You feed them what's left of your oats. You pat their flanks. But it's hard to bond when every day feels like their last. One guy cried when his mule died. Not because he loved it. Because it was carrying the tent. There are the angry ones too. The men who wake up shouting, fists clenched, ready to fight anyone. You keep your distance. Their fuse is short and their vocabulary is mostly curses. They've seen too much, lost too much, and every time someone talks about honour, you can see the vein in their forehead twitch like a loaded trap. You've also got the ghosters, men who go quiet, like their minds got left behind at the last battlefield. They sit, they stare, they don't sleep. They eat only when told. You speak to them. They don't answer. Once you found one in the woods, standing barefoot in the snow, eyes wide, whispering someone's name. No one knew who. He came back to camp, laid down, and didn't move for 3 days. Eventually he got up and started marching again. No one asked questions. Of course, there are good men, brave ones, funny ones, kind ones. The guy who shares the last bite of his hardtack. The one who sings terribly but won't stop. The one who always has a dumb story to tell about milking cows or outrunning tax collectors back home. They make the nights a little easier. They make the silence less deadly. But they're rare, and they don't last. People die out here, constantly, from illness, from wounds, from bad food, from no food, from accidents, from arguments. You stop asking names. You stop memorizing faces, because next week they'll be gone, and someone new will crawl into your tent, coughing, freezing, swearing they were told this would be easier than farming. And you? You just keep showing up. You load your musket. You tie your rags. You march. Surrounded by deserters, drunks, gamblers, ghosts, and maybe occasionally someone who remembers why they signed up in the first place. But most of you don't. Not anymore. You've been living in a world where men swing the muskets, give the orders, and stumble around the battlefield, bleeding into their socks. And you'd be forgiven for thinking that women were nowhere near this disaster. But that's just the version they wrote after the war. The one where powdered wigs took all the credit, and everyone else got listed in the fine print. In reality, women were everywhere. Behind the lines. On the lines. Beneath the radar. And doing the dirty, exhausting, thankless work that kept the whole army from collapsing into a pile of starving, frozen corpses even faster than it already was. Let's start with the camp followers, a title that sounds a lot worse than what it actually was. These were wives, sisters, mothers, and widows who followed the Continental Army not because they were curious or bored, but because they had no choice. Their homes had been burned, their farms pillaged, their husbands marched off to war and never came back. And so they packed up what little they had, slung babies over their backs, and joined the military the hard way, by walking beside it. They weren't officially enlisted. There were no ranks, no pay, but they did everything. They cooked, they cleaned, they nursed, they stitched, they gathered water, they washed the bodies of the dead and the almost dead, they repaired uniforms with scraps and prayers, they braved disease-ridden camps, froze in the same tents, and survived on the same mouldy bread. Only different was, when the orders came in, they didn't get mentioned. Not in the dispatches. Not in the letters home. Not even on the casualty lists. And yet, they kept going. Then there were the nurses. Not the starched, aproned, Florence Nightingale ideal you're picturing, but women handed rags, rum, and the vague instructions of don't let them die too fast. No medical training, no tools, no sanitation. Just raw instinct and infinite patience. They tended to open wounds, lanced abscesses, set bones with splints made from firewood. They caught diseases more often than the soldiers, and died from them at about the same rate. No statues, no pensions, just another grave with no name. You also had spies. That's right, actual intelligence operatives. And some of the best were women. Why? Because nobody expected them. They carried messages sewn into hems, passed coded letters baked into loaves of bread, eavesdropped on loyalist officers while serving drinks at taverns, rode miles through forests with fake names and secret drop points. Some were caught and hanged. Some were never caught at all. Most were never even acknowledged. The information they gathered saved lives, won battles, shifted the tide, and no one ever gave them a uniform or a thank you letter. There's Anna Smith Strong, for example, part of the Culper spy ring, who hung laundry in specific patterns to signal British troop movements. Laundry as espionage. You'd think that kind of ingenuity would earn a chapter in every school book. Instead, she got footnotes and guesswork. Her name was barely whispered for decades. Or Deborah Sampson, a woman who straight up disguised herself as a man and fought in combat. Shot. Wounded. Still kept going. She wrapped her own injuries to avoid discovery. Served for over a year before anyone noticed. And when they did, they didn't pin a medal on her. They told her to go home and be quiet. And don't forget Molly Pitcher. Not one person, but a nickname for multiple women who carried water to soldiers during battle, sometimes grabbing artillery rammers themselves when their husbands were killed beside them. Cannon fire still going, blood everywhere, and they just stepped up and took the next shot like it was laundry day. Some women were married to soldiers. Some weren't. Some came looking for safety. Some came looking for justice. All of them found the same thing: hardship, hunger, risk, and men too exhausted to say thank you. You saw them in every camp, not dressed in flowing gowns, but in patched skirts, soot-streaked sleeves, and boots falling apart at the seams. You shared fires with them, ate stew they made from unidentifiable roots and squirrel parts, watched them boil water over smoky pits to clean bandages you'd bled into. You didn't ask questions. They didn't ask for praise. It was just understood. You were still alive, and they had something to do with it. Some women wrote letters, pamphlets, accounts. Most were dismissed. A few were published anonymously, because who'd believe a woman had thoughts about war, strategy, politics, survival? Better to assume it was her husband, her brother, her editor. Easier that way. Back home, women ran farms, fought off looters, hid rebels, lied to loyalist patrols. Some got arrested. Some got their homes burned down. Some got labelled traitors for protecting people who would one day write the Declaration and conveniently forget their names. Women gave birth in tents, raised children in war zones, watched their sons march away with wooden guns and come back with missing limbs, or not at all. They held everything together: family, food, fire, memory, with hands that bled and backs that never got to rest. But history didn't give them medals. It gave them roles. Nurse, wife, angel of the camp. They weren't angels. They were soldiers, without uniforms, without recognition, without pay. You remember one? Her name was Sarah, maybe, or Mary, doesn't matter. She didn't talk much, just showed up with a wooden bucket and started boiling water, cleaned wounds, stitched shirts, shoved a man twice her size off a dying horse when he tried to steal a second blanket. She didn't smile. She didn't ask for anything. And when you tried to thank her, she looked at you like you were wasting air. You don't know what happened to her. She was gone one morning. No note. Just the faint smell of herbs and boiled socks. You didn't mention her in your next letter home. You didn't know how to explain it. That she was the reason Jenkins didn't die that night. That she was the reason you could still walk. That she was the only person who told the surgeon to wash his damn hands. So you just kept marching, and she disappeared into the mud like everyone else. You've heard the speeches, you've read the slogans: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All men are created equal. It's what you're supposed to be fighting for. This brand new nation, where no king rules you, no tyrant taxes you, and everyone gets a shot at freedom. Unless you're enslaved, then your options are fewer. Slavery didn't take a break during the American Revolution. It didn't pause while men in powdered wigs hashed out the language of liberty. It didn't even flinch. It just kept rolling, quietly and violently, beneath the surface of the very country being born. Because for all the fiery declarations about rights and resistance, this war was never meant to set everyone free. You saw it in camp. Enslaved men cooking food they'd never eat, tending fires that never warmed them, carrying supplies for troops who wouldn't look them in the eye. Sometimes they were hired out by their owners. Sometimes they were forced into service as substitutes. One man told you he joined the army to earn his freedom. His owner got paid, and he got promised a better life. Last you saw him, he was digging a latrine with a broken shovel and a limp. The contradiction was everywhere. Officers giving orders about liberty while sending letters home to check on their plantations. Soldiers bleeding for the cause while remembering that back home they still weren't allowed to read. A nation rising up against oppression, all while half of it was built on forced labour, and the other half was just really good at pretending not to notice. Some enslaved men fought on both sides. The British offered freedom to any who would escape their masters and join the crown. Thousands took the offer. You don't blame them. You'd have done the same. Sure, it was dangerous. Sure, it meant risking death in battle, disease in camp, or capture by someone who dragged them back in chains. But it was a choice, which for a lot of them was a brand new concept. The Continental Army, they hesitated. At first they didn't allow black soldiers at all. Then they allowed free black men, sort of. Then they changed their minds. Then they needed more bodies. Then they changed their minds again. Washington didn't want them. Then he did. Then he said it wasn't up to him. Meanwhile, you're watching men fight, bleed, and die, all while technically belonging to someone else. You remember one of them? His name was Prince, though nobody knew if that was a birth name or one given to him like a joke. He carried powder, cleaned weapons, knew how to read, quietly, fought in 2 battles, took a musket ball to the leg, no pension, no land, no plaque, just a scar and a story nobody wanted to write down. When the Declaration of Independence was read aloud at camp, you cheered. Everyone did. It was supposed to be a turning point. But even then, it felt wrong. Like there was something missing. You saw it in the faces of the men who weren't white. They didn't clap. They didn't cheer. They just stared at the fire, like they knew that all men wasn't going to include them anytime soon. And they were right. Back home, the same people crying about tyranny were writing property lists that included other human beings. They were building a free nation on a foundation of unfreedom, and not just in the South. The North had slavery too, just better PR. And when abolition was proposed, it wasn't moral outrage that stopped it. It was money. Because slavery wasn't just tolerated, it was profitable, convenient, institutional. A system so deeply entrenched that even revolutionaries who'd fought against being owned couldn't seem to wrap their heads around the idea of not owning others. Some soldiers questioned it, not many, not loudly. The few who did, the Quakers, the radicals, the ones who'd seen too much, got ignored, shushed, or transferred. You kept your mouth shut. You didn't want to be labelled difficult. You needed your rations. You needed your unit. You needed to survive. But you noticed. You noticed that black men who fought sometimes got nothing. No land, no recognition. Just sent back to wherever they came from, if they were free, or to whoever owned them, if they weren't. You noticed that captured black soldiers were often sold back into slavery, that their service wasn't honoured, that their names didn't appear in letters home, or in the stories officers told over drinks. You also noticed that some white soldiers didn't care, didn't want to think about it, didn't see the contradiction. That's just how it is, they said. Not our problem. They were too focused on the British, on winter, on not dying. You get it. But the hypocrisy still stuck in your throat. And the worst part? You were fighting for a document, a dream, that deliberately left slavery alone. The Declaration said nothing. The Constitution would later dance around it. Liberty, but with an asterisk. Rights, but only if you met the qualifications. Even now in the mud and cold, with your stomach hollow and your socks dissolving, you know it's rotten. That this revolution, noble as it pretends to be, has cracks. That freedom is being built with blind spots big enough to swallow entire generations. But you keep fighting, because maybe someday someone will fix it. Maybe the next war. Maybe the next generation. Maybe after all the statues have been built and all the speeches have been made, someone will realise that liberty isn't real if it only applies to some. For now, you reload your musket and march with men whose freedom won't come with a treaty. When they told you the story of the American Revolution, they didn't mention the part where entire villages burned, or where alliances shifted like sand, or where entire nations were forced to choose between a British Empire that barely respected them and a brand new country that openly wanted their land. Because that's the version of the war that didn't fit on a flag. The version nobody painted. The version that gets edited out of the victory speech. You saw signs of it early, even if you didn't understand them at the time. Scouts whispering about ambushes. Civilians talking about hostile savages. Officers arguing in tents about whether to send a gift or a threat. And now, as you march through forests that used to be hunting grounds, you finally realise the truth. This isn't just a revolution. It's a land grab with drums. Native nations didn't get to sit this one out. They were forced into it. Some sided with the British, who at least pretended to offer boundaries and treaties. Others chose the Americans, hoping that loyalty might buy them peace or protection. Most just tried to survive, watching two colonial powers tear each other apart while their homes sat in the crossfire. The Iroquois Confederacy? It split in two. Centuries of unity, undone in a few months by a foreign war that wasn't theirs to begin with. The Mohawk and Seneca largely sided with the British. The Oneida and Tuscarora leaned toward the Americans. The result? Family fighting family. Neighbours turned enemies. Villages burning in retaliation for decisions made hundreds of miles away by men in powdered wigs and expensive chairs. You've heard the orders. Scorch the earth. Destroy the crops. Eliminate the threat. They called it strategy. You called it what it was. Destruction. Whole towns wiped out because someone heard a rumour they were helping loyalists. Fields salted. Livestock taken or slaughtered. Winter supplies torched. You passed through one of the towns after it had been hit. There were no bodies, just smoke and silence. And yes, there were attacks on settlers. Raids, ambushes, burned cabins. You knew people who lost relatives. You were trained to be afraid. But no one ever explained why. Why native fighters might hate you. Why they might reject your revolution. Why they weren't interested in helping you build a country on top of theirs. Funny how that part never made it into the sermons. You started to see it clearly when you met an Oneida guide. He spoke better English than your captain. Helped your unit navigate a swamp that would have killed half of you otherwise. Knew the terrain, the weather, the food sources. You owed him your life. And yet, after the battle, someone made a comment. Something about not trusting his kind. You didn't say anything. Not because you agreed, but because you didn't know how to explain what it felt like to owe your survival to someone your country already planned to erase. The British, for their part, weren't noble protectors either. They promised things, borders, trade, peace. But they also armed factions, encouraged conflict, and abandoned their allies the second it became inconvenient. They used native forces as scouts and buffers, let them take the blame when things got ugly, then walked away when it was time to negotiate treaties. Ask the Mohawks what they got after the war. Go on, I'll wait. The truth is, neither side fought for native survival. They fought for native land, and whichever flag won, native people were going to lose. The revolution just decided which European-descended government would be in charge of breaking promises from now on. You start to notice patterns. Which trails are quiet, which forests never echo. You pass through regions that used to be bustling, and now feel hollow. You see broken tools left behind in burned houses. A child's toy under a tree. Charred wooden walls that still smell like ash. You realise you're standing in someone else's ruins. Sometimes you encounter native refugees. Small groups moving west, away from the fighting, carrying what little they could salvage. Women, children, elders, eyes hard, faces unreadable. You don't approach, you don't wave, you just watch as they disappear into the trees. Another civilization shoved into the shadows. And yet, they fought. Not just with weapons, though many did, but with diplomacy, resistance, strategy. Some nations stayed neutral as long as possible. Some played both sides. Some tried to write their own futures in the space between empires. Most were ignored. All were affected. Your officers don't talk about it. Your letters home don't mention it. But you know. You've walked through their roads, slept under their stars, used maps drawn by their hands, and you've watched your own side burn what they built. When the war ends, if it ends, they won't be invited to the celebration. There will be no native signatures on the peace treaty, no native generals in the victory parade, just a line in someone's diary, cleared land. And the worst part? The men who did it won't feel guilty. They'll call it destiny, manifest even, as if there was ever a plan that included them. But you were there. You know better. They told you there would be a celebration, that when the fighting ended, there'd be cheering in the streets, bells ringing, drinks flowing, flags waving from every window, and sure, somewhere, in some well-fed town where no one ever dug a latrine with their bare hands or chewed leather out of desperation, that probably happened. But for you, and for everyone still wears boots with holes and shirts that haven't been washed since 1777, the end of the war feels quiet, unfinished, maybe even wrong. You hear the news second-hand. A letter read out loud by an officer. A rumour passed from camp to camp. It's over. That's all you get. No parade, no feast, no warm bed and a pension. Just a damp field, an empty stomach, and the lingering suspicion that someone, somewhere, has decided their part of the revolution is over, and yours never really counted. Some guys cheer, out of reflex mostly, or confusion, or because someone handed them a bottle, but it fades fast. Because the truth is, nobody knows what comes next. You've spent years living day to day, marching, bleeding, freezing, starving. And now what? Go home? To what? A ruined farm? A town that forgot your name? A family that thought you were already dead? The war is over, but you're not done. You're still sick, still hungry, still owed a year's worth of wages, a few promises about land, and maybe a half-functioning leg. And guess what? None of that's coming quickly. Congress is broke, the army is disbanding, officers are resigning, and you're just kind of standing there, wondering if the government remembers that you still exist. Spoiler, it doesn't. There's a brief moment of hope. They say you'll get a bonus, some land, a certificate, maybe even a parade if you live in the right state. You line up, you wait. You're handed a piece of paper that says, essentially, we'll get back to you. And then someone takes your uniform, your musket, and your name off the roster. Like you were never there to begin with. You walk back to town, Or try to. The roads are wrecked. The bridges are gone. The only shoes you have are more hole than leather. Every step is a reminder that no one planned for the part after the fighting. You pass other men doing the same, limping, coughing, hauling what's left of their lives in a sack tied with rope. You nod to each other. No one speaks. When you reach home, if there is a home, it doesn't feel like a return. It feels like breaking into someone else's life. Everything's changed. You don't recognise the trees. The barn's collapsed. The fence is gone. Your parents are older. Your sister's taller. Your dog doesn't know who you are. And the silence? It's loud. Too loud. After years of shouting, marching, gunfire and moaning, the quiet of peacetime hits like a hammer to the skull. Some people are happy to see you. Kind of. They pat you back, call you a hero, offer you bread that's gone hard from sitting too long on the shelf. But they don't know what to say. They ask what it was like. You try to answer, and realise you can't. You don't have the words for frozen amputations, rats in tents, or watching a man dig his own grave after losing a coin toss. So you shrug. Say it was hard. They nod and move on. You missed the war. Not the blood, not the pain, but the purpose, the structure, the shared misery. The way you knew what each day would be. Suffering, yes, but simple. Now there's just drifting. You wake up, stare at the ceiling, and wonder if you should plant something, build something, run. It all feels absurd. Some men get jobs, some don't. Some drink. Heavily. Some never stop wearing their old uniform. You see one man sleeping outside the tavern every night. Says it's the only place he can hear noise loud enough to drown out what's still in his head. And while you're adjusting to whatever this new life is supposed to be, you hear about the real celebrations. The ones in Philadelphia, Boston, New York, parades with generals on horseback, marching bands, flags, fireworks, everyone cheering while you sit on a porch with a scarred stomach and a cup of water because the rum ran out 3 counties ago. There are statues now, stories being written, history being shaped, and somehow your part is already being flattened into a footnote. You fought, you bled, you suffered. But the names being remembered belong to men with clean hands and clean uniforms. The ones who gave speeches, not the ones who dug latrines. You get a letter once, from a friend. Talks about the celebration in the Capitol. How we won. How the nation is grateful. You look at your boots, at your hands, at the stack of IOUs where your pay was supposed to be, and you wonder what exactly was won. Because liberty came, sure, for some, for the landowners, the voters, the ones already free. But if you were poor, black, native, female, or just unlucky, it didn't feel like a revolution. It felt like a reshuffling. The British left, the debt stayed, the struggle kept going. You light a fire that night, not for warmth, just because you can. Just because no one's going to come yell at you for it. It's not celebration. It's survival. It's still all you know. You fall asleep with your back against the wall, out of habit. And in your dreams, you're still in uniform. They keep using the word victory. They say it on the pamphlets. The preachers say it in their sermons. Some kid at the general store says it like it's supposed to mean something, like, congratulations, you did it. But you're standing there in your patched up coat, ribs visible through your shirt, and skin that hasn't been fully dry since Valley Forge, wondering when exactly victory was supposed to start feeling like anything other than slow collapse. Because you're still broke, just broke in a different kind of silence now. The kind where no one's marching anymore, but no one's getting paid either. The war bonds you were promised? Worth less than the paper they're printed on? The land grants? Stuck in some congressional backlog with all the urgency of a wet log. You've got nothing in your pocket but lint, and maybe the corner of a hardtack crumb you saved out of instincts. You show up to town meetings to ask about back pay. They nod. They say, "We're working on it." One guy pulls out a big book and says something about funding allocation. You don't speak that language. All you know is your boots are still tied together with string, and the only job anyone's offering is to dig a ditch for 5 cents and a slice of something that used to be pie. You've gone home, if you had one, and it's not the same. The farm's half dead, the roof leaks, your brother's gone, your sister's married to someone you don't recognise, and your mother flinches every time you come through the door because your silhouette matches the one she saw at the burial hill 3 years ago. You tell her you're fine. She nods. Neither of you believe it. Your body doesn't work like it used to. The cough hasn't gone away. You've got sores that won't heal, skin that cracks in the cold, and a limp that showed up sometime around the second siege and never left. You sleep light. You twitch at loud noises. You check behind you for reasons you don't understand. Some nights you wake up with your hands clenched around a stick, ready to swing at ghosts that aren't there anymore. But you're free now, they say. You're a citizen of a new republic. So why does it still feel like a punishment? You watch as the officers, the real ones, with names that will end up in books, get their promotions, their land, their seats in government. They're fine. Always were. You? You're still waiting on your first real meal of the month. You walk past a tavern and hear your general's name toasted over imported rum you can't afford to smell, let alone drink. And you wonder, is this what winning feels like? You start noticing which of your old comrades didn't come back. Not just the ones buried, the ones drifting, the ones who never left the war. Jenkins tried to open a shop. It burned down. Levi drinks now. Morning to night. You found him asleep in a wheelbarrow last week. There's no safety net, no pensions, no system. Just good luck and local gossip. Every time someone says liberty, you nod politely. But deep down, it's become a word with no weight. Not because it doesn't matter, because it costs too much to keep pretending it came for free. You know what it took. You saw it, you lived it, you buried it. And now it feels like the only people who got liberty are the ones who already had enough of it to never need to pick up a musket in the first place. There's talk of taxes, always is. Talk of more conflicts coming, of rebellions in the making, of debts unpaid and foreign powers watching. You're not surprised. You've learned how this works. You do the bleeding, they do the talking. And when it's over, you go back to your corner of the world with a limp and a handful of thank yous that can't be traded for bread. Some mornings you feel angry. Other mornings you feel nothing. You sharpen your knife. You fix a fence post. You try to convince yourself this is peace. You avoid town squares on holidays. You don't want to hear the speeches. You don't want to see the flags. You don't want to stand in a crowd while someone talks about what this country means to people who never had to lose anything for it. You ran out of dreams a while ago. Now you settle for food, dry socks, a day without back pain. You hear there's another war brewing in Europe. You don't care. Let them fight it. You've done your part. You've still got scars under your sleeves and 2 molars that never made it through Yorktown. Victory, you realise, was never for you. It was above you, around you, written in ink while you bled in mud. You were the scaffolding, the smoke, the part they'll mention in a single paragraph in some school book printed 50 years from now by someone who's never missed a meal. But you're still here, broke, aching, bitten, burned. You pull your coat tighter and keep walking. So you survived, somehow, through the frostbite, the diarrhea, the musket jams, the back pay that never showed, the trench that doubled as a grave, and now you're expected to go home. That's the phrase they keep using. Like it's that simple. Like you can just pack up what's left of your body, tip your non-existent hat, and stroll back into civilian life like the last 7 years were just a very intense internship. First, there's the question, do you even have a home? Because plenty of soldiers don't. Farms collapsed, families moved, towns got burned down in raids, and even if the house is technically still there, the person you were before the war isn't. You walk through the same door, but it doesn't feel like yours anymore. Everything's smaller, quieter. The war didn't follow you, but it never really left either. People expect you to be grateful, to smile, to tell stories. The kids want tales of battles and horses and heroism. You try, you start a sentence, and halfway through, you remember that the ending wasn't glorious, just loud and wet and over too fast. So you say it was hard, and change the subject. They don't need to hear about the rats chewing on your boots while you slept, about burying someone you shared a canteen with for 3 years. You're not unique. The roads are full of men like you, thin, coughing, limping, trying to figure out where to go. Some drift from farm to farm looking for work. Some find corners in taverns and stay there. Some disappear into the woods with a bottle and a Bible and don't come back. You nod at each other when you pass. You don't speak. There's nothing left to say. And then there's the paperwork. Because the new government, the one you fought to create, is now very busy. Debating trade, borders, taxes, constitutions. But they're somehow not that busy when it comes to processing your discharge pay or that land you were promised. You send letters. You wait. You send more. You get back form letters, if anything. One man got his pension 3 years late and died 2 weeks after the first payment. The army sent condolences. No refund. So you work odd jobs. Cut lumber. Move stones. Mend fences that don't belong to you. Your hands don't shake anymore, but that's not a good sign. It's just nerve damage. You eat what you can afford. You sleep when your ribs stop hurting long enough to let you lie still. Sometimes you wake up thinking you're still in camp. You smell smoke and hear someone coughing, and it all comes rushing back like water through a split dam. You find out that some of the loyalists, the ones who fought against you, got better land deals. Some of them fled to Canada. Some stayed. Some got their property back. You didn't. You weren't even on a property list. You were just a line item under infantry, irregular. The ink has faded. Nobody's checking it anymore. And yet they want you to vote. They want you to believe. They want you to act like this new republic is the prize. You stand in line at the town hall next to men who never picked up a musket and listen to them talk about what the country needs now, as if they earned the right to decide. You check your hands. The dirt's still there. The blood's gone mostly. You pass by a school one day, kids reciting a poem about liberty. You pause, not out of sentiment, just out of surprise. It's a pretty version. Talks about flags and eagles and destiny. You wonder if they'll ever be told about hunger, the amputations, the lies. You wonder if they'd even believe it. There are reunions sometimes. Small ones. Men who fought in the same unit gathering under a tree to share a meal and talk about who made it, who didn't, and what they're doing now. You don't always go. It's too much. Too many faces with new scars, old ghosts, missing limbs. But when you do, there's comfort in the silence. You eat, nod, and sit by the fire. Not for warmth, but because you know the others need it too. The war ends. The misery doesn't. It just changes shape. No more bayonets, just bills. No more marching orders. Just the long, quiet walk through whatever's left of your life. You're free, yes, but not whole. The flag's still flying, but your back still aches. You don't salute it. You just glance at it and keep moving. Eventually people stop asking what it was like. The stories fade, the papers turn yellow. New wars come, new names, new uniforms. You become part of the background, a veteran with no plaque, a voice nobody records, a reminder that the price of a country isn't paid once. It's paid over and over, by the people no one thanks properly until they're gone. So you live. You mend fences. You fix roofs. You cough into your sleeve and pretend it's not getting worse. Because the revolution ended. But you didn't. So that was your revolution. Not the version with parades and polished buttons. Not the one from textbooks where everything wraps up neatly and everyone claps. Just the real one. The one with mud in your teeth, blood in your boots, and a vague sense that maybe, just maybe, freedom was a little more complicated than they made it sound. You made it through. Sort of. You didn't freeze to death. You weren't shot by a redcoat or buried by your own country's paperwork. You got a front row seat to history and a backache that'll outlive you. So go ahead. Blow out the candle. Let the quiet settle in. No one's firing muskets anymore. No one's giving orders. It's just you, your thoughts, and the long, slow realization that the end isn't a moment. It's everything that happens after. Thanks for listening. Sleep well. You've earned it. Probably.